Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined a doctor as he travels the Vortex and landed at episode number 231. And there are plenty of feeble witticisms here. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
I'm good. How are you?
Very
Exhausted. Tired.
How'd the move?
We're doing really well. We're done.
How'd the unpacking?
It's almost done.
Really?
About 85%,
Wow.
I would say. Pretty much most of what we have left is hanging pictures and unpacking knickknacks. But yesterday I spent several hours on the roof clearing out gutters.
Is your basement still leaking?
I need it to rain.
So you can
So I can find out.
Well, it's rain a lot, too.
Yeah, well, and the last several rains, there wasn't much water in the basement. So what they had done before we even moved in helped a lot. And then I think hopefully clearing out the gutters and the downspouts.
Do you think it was just the gutters and the downspouts that were causing it?
There were seedlings in my gutters. I killed many of plants in the gutter, and the smell. Oh God, the smell. Like sewage. In addition to the random stuff I mentioned last week, including an envelope full of foreign money.
Did you mention that?
You're rich!
Republic doctores are no good here.
A Russian 10 ruble. Also, I found a caricature.
Worth nothing now.
A caricature of Kramer from Seinfeld in the basement. I think I mentioned the pictures, the portraits in the
on a bill?
No, this was separate. I would frame it if it was
Yeah,
on
I know
a bill.
why.
Funny enough, that's actually legal tender in Tunisia, so...
But I stumbled across another coaxial cable that looked like it was going up right next to either the shower drain or the toilet. But it's not coming up through the floor. It goes up there.
Good.
I can't find it next to the toilet, and obviously if it's underneath the shower, I can't see it. So
How am I supposed to watch TV in the bathroom?
So there's all sorts of little things we're discovering. But I have to say, I never thought I would enjoy owning a house so much.
You're a rare breed.
Even though I didn't do much else and lost so much time just doing little stuff around the house, I enjoyed my week off so much.
That's what happens.
Even though I didn't relax. I didn't
You're
have a
one
day
of
where I
those
relaxed.
people.
I disagree. I think the majority of people do this is you buy a house, and the first thing you think is you're overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, all of these things I have to do on my own now. I don't have a landlord to do them. All these projects that you want to do, and you don't have any idea how to do them. And then when you get in here and you start doing them, there's just something really refreshing about, hey, I did that. I can do this. And then you're tinkering around.
I could go do this, and I'll go do this.
Right,
and then
exactly.
I lose an hour stringing cables in the basement.
Pretty soon you're running electricity to outlets that aren't supposed to be there, and
First, I got
not grounding things correctly and starting fires. But hey, it's a lot of fun.
You're doing it.
I like those moments.
We
I
did
like
get
to
our
wave at them as they pass by because it's not my responsibility.
We did get our washer and dryer delivered, so that was nice.
Good.
And we got our mower back, and it's working well. I did not mow.
Too wet to mow.
Well, I did mow Wednesday. I was able to mow. I actually made the rounds on Wednesday. That's all I did, was got the washer and dryer delivered and mowed. Because I went over to my dad's, because he was still overseas, and mowed his front yard and backyard. Went to my mom's and mowed our yard, and had the washer and dryer delivered.
While you're at it, why didn't you come over and mow my backyard? Because it's a jungle right now.
I barely finished getting my mom's done in time for Sarah to get home. I was going to string cable after that and didn't have time. And I didn't even fully finish my dad's front yard because a friend of theirs came by and was like, I was going to come mow. I have a riding mower. I was like, well, I've already done most of it, but you can feel free to take over and do the neighbor's yard, which my dad's done.
You can tell he's still early in the marriage. Now, at this point, 19 years later, it's me calling going, yeah, I've got another hour and a half before I'm going to be home, none. Sorry. She's already been home for an hour and a half. Take your time. The kids are at your mom's.
Well, that gives her some luxury time to herself, too. I think we had some sort of plan going on. We were going to do Wednesday night, but I don't remember what it was. So that was also why I wanted to.
Well, yeah, and then it doesn't fly because she's like, "Why aren't you here now?"
we're going to be late. So.
All right. I've only mowed half the yard, but okay, I'll come home.
Well, and that's what I kind of had to do with our yard because they were supposed to deliver our washer and dryer between 3:30 and 5:30. Perfect. I can go do Mom's. I can go do.
It'd be perfect.
No,
they're never on time.
Well, no, here's the thing.
3:30 to 5:30 really means anywhere between 1 and midnight.
Well, here's the thing. I got a call at 1 o'clock saying, "Yeah, we're running about an hour early." Or no, it was like noon. We're running about an hour early. We'll be at your place in an hour. So I had to stop mowing my dad's backyard and go over and then come back and do his front yard. And I had to, because I was going to, I can go do these 2 yards and then mow our yard while I wait for the washer and dryer to show up.
Then they actually showed up that hour early?
Yeah.
Holy cow, where did you buy this dryer?
Sears.
Sears? We'll start shopping at Sears.
Yeah.
Because what we're running an hour early means... We had you scheduled at 3. Normally we get there at 6, but we're actually going to get there at 5 now, is what that usually means.
But yeah. Well, Sarah's parents bought the same washer as us, and that's how we found out about the great deal on it. And when they had it delivered the day before, and we went over there like 6, and it was supposed to be between like 5:30 and 7, or 5 and 7, and it was already there. So whoever they're contracting to deliver these things, they're doing a great job.
Sears. I'll write that down.
Sears.
There's more for your life at Sears.
I did get some stuff watched, though.
What'd you watch?
I went and saw Mad Max Road Fury. Or Fury Road. I always do.
Well, you saw the wrong film then, because it was Fury Road.
How was that one? I haven't watched it yet.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was... Tonally, it was a little bit different than I expected. A little bit more serious of a tone than I expected. I don't know... If the trailers made it seem so manic and so that I thought it was just going to be nuts and fun, and there was a bit more seriousness to the story that I didn't expect. But I really enjoyed it. I don't know if it was as amazing for me as it was hyped to be, and that could be also it was just hyped so much.
That's why I went and saw it the first weekend, because that's what happened to me. As I get there and I go, yeah, I'm a sucker for the hype.
But it was superbly well done, and I'm really looking forward to more. I did watch, as I talked about last week, frequently asked questions about time travel. You guys need to watch this movie. It almost reaches Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg level.
Really?
It's nearly that good. Actually, one of the probably weakest part is probably Anna Faris, but she's not in it much. I'm just not a big fan of her as an actress. There are all sorts of references all throughout it, including a great line that's, if you watch like the trailer that is on HBO Go, it's included in it, so it's not a spoiler. I can't remember the character's name, but they paraphrase the line from Flash Gordon. I love you, but we only have 14 hours to save the Earth. They included this line into the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sold.
Sold. When they first start talking about time travel, Time Lord gets dropped. One of the characters is wearing a scarf, almost reminiscent of the Fourth Doctor's. I looked it up. One of the actors played Shakespeare in Doctor Who. So there's that connection. And the writer of it is Jamie Matheson.
Really?
Yeah. So this was the first thing he had done, was write this movie.
Okay. Now it's...
For those who don't recognize the name, he wrote...
Murder or Mummy on the Orient Express.
And Mummy on the Orient Express.
Yeah.
In season 8. So I highly recommend it. Chris O'Dowd is phenomenal in it, as he always is. And it's kind of the younger, more IT crowd-esque, a bit more. It seems like his roles has started getting more cynical.
Does he have a Scottish accent in this?
A little bit. It's not as heavy.
He showed up in Girls that I've been watching on HBO.
Oh, yeah.
With a completely American accent.
Well, he starts.
And I went,
the movie
what?
starts. The movie starts with a segment of him with not his normal accent, and then he gets back to it because he's playing a role in the very beginning of the movie. So he's acting as an actor. It's one of those things. So he eventually gets back to his accent, but it's not. Sometimes his accent for me has been very hard to understand.
It is harsh, yeah.
And this one's toned back a little bit.
Scottish or is he Irish?
I think he's Irish.
I think you're right. I think he's Irish.
But there are some great lines in this movie. Like, it turns out in the future, everyone's American. I really wish it was on Blu-ray because I would buy it. It's so enjoyable. What'd you guys do?
I watched a couple movies this week. I watched The French Connection, which I had never seen.
Really?
Yeah. It's kind of been on my list for a while. Just hadn't quite got to it.
It's essential movie watching.
I love 70s cinema. I love the bleakness in a way, which is weird for me because I'm such a happy guy. But I like the fact that we've got Gene Hackman,
the muted earth tones and the sullen plot. What am I going? Melancholy plot, and
we've got Gene Hackman, and he's playing this cop named Popeye Doyle. If this movie had been made today, there would have been a conversation while we're sitting in the car on stakeout, and somebody would have asked him, so where'd the name come from? And there would have been this whole backstory about why he's named Popeye. In the 70s, nope, he's just named Popeye, get over it.
It's based on book series.
No, it's based on a true story.
Yeah, but the books were written.
Well, they wrote a book based
French
on it.
Connection is actually based on the book, The French Connection, which is a true story. Well, somewhat true. I mean,
mostly
for the most
true.
Part, yeah, mostly
inspired by true events. But yeah, he's just Popeye. Get over it. There's a story.
That's kind of the approach Fury Road had.
In a way.
It's this. Get over it.
And at one point in time, he's like, I know the drugs are out there. I've got a hunch. And then this other cop says,
Jimmy Popeye Doyle. That was his name.
The last hunch you had got a good cop killed. And in today's movies, there would have been a whole exploration of what happened.
Yeah.
No.
And he would have been a very remorseful and...
They would have had to redeem him and all. No. Popeye's kind of a jerk, and they never explained the cop that got killed. It's just like, I love that you just left this out there. What he didn't love is the ending. The ending of this movie is very ambiguous. Mm. And for 70s cinema, that's very appropriate, because that's kind of one of the things. But it just, I mean, it's a great film. It is it's the second best car chase. Well, we might have to include Fury Road now, but the second best car chase ever filmed, the first still being Bullet. And it's amazing. And then it gets to the end, and it's like, I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't know if I've ever seen that one.
It's totally worth watching. And, of course...
I take it you haven't seen French Connection 2, then.
I've not, but in my research on trying to figure out what happened at the ending, I read the plot and what happened and kind of went, no, I don't think I need to see it.
It's not very good.
Yeah.
It's
Did they get Gene Hackman back for that
so
one?
much better. Yeah. And then Ed O'Neill played Popeye Doyle in a television movie called Popeye Doyle.
And then I watched Ninja Turtles.
The Michael Bay one.
Michael Bay produced one. Yeah.
The most recent one.
There are a handful of genuinely enjoyable, really good bits in that movie. You guys have or have not seen it?
Yeah.
We've both reviewed it, too.
Okay, I don't remember that.
We didn't expect you to.
The mountain chase was great. Where they're going down that was all cool.
Although the plot, why they had to go there,
I'll get to that in a minute.
They just had a cool idea for a mountain chase. And needed to get someplace that they could do it.
I think the problem with the mountain chase is I saw that clip
a good chunk of it
prior
in the trailer.
To, well, not even the trailer. They had released the even longer clip of that online, so I'd already seen all of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Bummer. But the mountain chase was cool.
There were other action scenes I thought that were pretty decent.
The bit where they start beatboxing in the elevator. I mean, this is...
Also in the trailer?
This was really good, characterization. I must not have seen that trailer then, because I don't remember that either. But, I didn't care for the design of the turtles. I still think their noses are weird.
I like their bodies, but I don't like their faces. Yeah.
But I bought everything else.
I didn't like some of the characterization for Mikey.
He was a little too juvenile, but
too perverted. Pervy, I guess, rather, not perverted, pervy. I know they're supposed to be teenagers, but...
But I was okay with that.
Shell tightening and whatnot.
Yeah, I didn't know the difference between perverted and pervy. I thought they were the same thing. I suppose pervy's an action and perverted is a...
Pervy seems less harsh.
I guess pervy is too.
Pervy's...
I think they're
funny.
I think they're the same thing.
Perverted is
just... They're the same idea.
Creepy.
Yeah. Perverted just has a harsher tone to it.
I don't know why. So, Megan Fox, I'm convinced, is a robot. A badly programmed Japanese life model decoy. Because she's not human. She attempts to act human and can't do it. I'm just convinced that she's not one of us. And she's not even that attractive in this film.
Well, we know that she's a robot because they screwed up, put toes on her thumbs instead of fingers.
And then the plot, I mean, let's forget for a moment that they ripped off most of it from The Amazing Spider-Man. Okay, I'm going to spoiler territory ahead. I got to talk about this. So William Fichtner's character, who's revealed to be kind of, the bad guy, he's giving this whole spiel. He's doing the classic villain. He's monologuing. And he's got the turtles, and he's siphoning off their blood so that he can develop this mutagen. And he says, in 2 hours, Shredder's going to go up and release this toxin on New York from the top of my building. That's the Superman or the Spider-Man joke. And then, after about 30 days or so, I'll come along and I'll develop this anti-thing from the mutagen in your blood and it'll save the city. And it'll make me stupid rich. Okay, first of all, he's up there going to release the gas in 2 hours, and you just captured the turtles. That's not a huge window for you to develop this thing. The plan was already in motion. You were going to obliterate all these people anyway, whether there was an antidote or not. Okay? You got to think about that there, pal. Secondly, your motivation, because it'll make me, quote, stupid rich. Have you seen your house? You have a heliport on the front lawn.
You already are stupid
You are already
rich.
stupid rich. How much further stupid rich do you need to be?
No. He's dumb rich right now.
He's dumb.
He's trying to achieve stupid rich.
If I had a heliport on my front lawn, I'm sorry, I would consider myself stupid rich. That's that and a metal refrigerator. Those are kind of the bars to reach for. And then there's the whole, oh, I remember you guys. You were my pet turtles because my dad was the one working on this thing. And it's like, what? Really?
That part I didn't have much of a problem with.
It didn't make sense to me that you would need to even go there. But they went there. I was like, all right, whatever.
There were some nice touches in that, though, because the colors on the back of the shells
were
still there when they were fully grown.
Yeah.
But at least they paid attention to details in that aspect.
But it wasn't necessary. And then the mind-blowing one for me was Splinter decides that the way to keep the boy safe is to teach himself jujitsu. And then impart this information onto the kids.
From a book.
From a book. He became a ninja master from a book.
Reading is power.
And then Mel and I started Arrested Development. There's money in the banana stand.
Finally. I saw when you posted it on Facebook, I thought, hopefully that means he has started.
That's what that means, yeah. She decided she couldn't get enough of Arrow. Or Archer. She was, I'm sad Archer's over. And it's like, well, we could watch this because the mom's in it. And she's like, okay. And after 2 episodes, she's like, yeah, this show's awesome. And I was like, I told you.
Well, you're going to want to watch, go back, after you watch the entire series, you want to go back and watch it again because you'll catch 1,000 more things you didn't catch the first time. And it'll be a lot funnier because you'll realize there was a running joke going on the whole time.
So, that was my day, my week.
I didn't watch anything this week. You're
current on all your shows.
I am. I've still got 4 episodes of Gotham because I burned out on it. I'll eventually go back and watch those. But I continue watching Girls, so I think I'm on season 4 now. I think it just started season 4. And then Mason this weekend was his Cub Scout campout. So we did that. We went out Saturday afternoon, and one of the scout leaders, she's actually in charge of the whole pack. She arranged we were originally going to go up to Holton to an actual campsite, but they wanted to be closer to town for some reason, and I can't remember what it was. I think because they weren't sure what the weather was going to be like or anything, and they thought if it opened up, we could come home easier. So we actually camped out near Hoyt at her parents' house. They have just tons and tons of acreage, and their backyard goes up to a pond. And then along the backside of the pond, there's a trail that goes through some wooded area that actually adjoins to her aunt's house. And then around to the other side of the pond is her grandmother's house, and she's the one that actually owns the pond. So they all kind of sit adjacent right around this pond area. And so we camped out there because the Boy Scouts of America now require, at least for the Cub Scouts, that you have a working restroom within so many feet from the campsite. And there's a lot of stipulation. Well, for Cubs, because they're so young. So we took out we have a 4-man tent, which is in reality a 3-man tent, but we have a 4-man tent.
I always consider tents half the amount of what you say.
Well, this isn't quite half because Mason and I were comfortable with enough room for probably somebody to lay between us. And then
I guess when you have a younger kid too.
Yeah, well, but I had the cot, the full-size cot that he was on, and I was on a full-size, well, not full-size, but a twin-size air mattress. And there was still enough room to get another twin-size air mattress in the middle. It's a good-sized tent. And so we set
upstairs.
Yeah. So it's kind of like those ones in Harry Potter where you go in and it's bigger on the inside. And so we set up the tent and just we'll spend the day. Some of the activities is they had fishing poles out there that anybody could take. Well, all of the closed cast, real easy fishing poles were gone. They were all out. All they had left were these open-sided, the ones that are on the bottom, spin casters.
No.
Now, I had a spin casting reel when I was a kid, but I haven't fished since I was probably 11 years old. And I thought, what am I going to do? Because there's nobody available to help him do this but me. And I thought, all right, we're going to give this a try. Because I sort of remember how to do this. So we went up, and I remarkably remembered how to bait a worm with no problem. We took it down to the pond, and we stood there on the shore, and I looked at it, and I went, okay, this is coming back to me. So apparently it's like riding a bike, because it all really came back to me. And I did, because you have to hold it in such a way, you trap the line with your finger, you cast, you let go, you flip the little box back so that it catches the line so you can reel it in. And it went great. I went, this is just second hat now. I mean, apparently this stuck with me. This is wonderful. So I showed him going, now I'm going to show my 7-year-old son how to work this fishing pole. Am I kidding? So I said, okay, let me cast it out once so I remember how to do it. So I did it. I cast it out as I'm reeling it in. Fish! And of course, I pulled the fish up and realized I've never, my dad always took the fish off. So I'm standing there going, help. So Scott, one of the scout leaders, came down and I said, I need you to help me take this off of here because I've never done it before. And so he grabbed the fish, took the hook out, gave us back, still had some worm on there. So I gave the fishing rod and reel to Mason and kind of went through the motions with him. And he got it out the first time. And it's like, okay, that was good. And we reeled it in. He did it one more time with my help, reeled it in, grabbed that pole, went over. From then on, he was on his own. The kid just took right to that reel, and I was like, wow. Which is a good thing, because there was another kid next to me that didn't have an adult with him that couldn't cast to save his life. And so I kept having to help this kid get it out of the reeds and get it back, cast it back out of the So it's about that time I'm going, okay, this kid's working okay. Mason's doing great. He's over there master fisherman, just praying that he'll catch a fish because he wants to catch a fish so bad. And Dad caught the first fish, first try. So I've already set the bar way high. So this kid finally...
That's why I don't fish, son. I'm too good at it.
So finally this kid to my right,
no fish left.
I hear, I got one! And I look around and I go, oh good. And I look over and there's no other adult around. And the kid's really efficient and he looks at me and he goes, can you help me? Okay, I watched Scott do this. I can do this. So another kid takes off to get Scott because he's out there. Apparently, I was like, this guy's not going to know what the hell he's doing.
The smart kid. I'll go get an adult. Stay here.
Just like Scott did. I take the jig and I hold on to it. I put my finger in the fish's mouth because you put it on the bottom of the lip. Pulled the hook out. I got the fish off. I'm like, okay. So I'm getting ready to take it back down to the pond and I look up and Scott's coming down and he's looking at me and I go, yeah, me. I got this. I got it. I got it now. We're okay. And he's like, okay. So we throw it back in. Of course, we're doing catch and release. And so then after that, we had dinner.
Did Mason get a fish?
Yeah, Mason did not get a fish.
Oh.
Then so dinner was...
Fish?
No.
Seems logical.
No, the illogical... Oh, no, I take that back. After we fished, we went on a nature hike. I should go there first because they give the kids all of these, and this makes it sound like I had a horrible time, but I didn't. I had a lot of fun, and because Mason had a blast. That was the important thing. So I'm always, trying to keep, because this is not my thing. I'm not a camper. I like to go out and camp. I love the outdoors. I don't like structured, hardcore camping, which this isn't even hardcore, but this was too much for me. But anyway, so they give these little charts out to the kids that have all of these different type of leaves that we're going to look for, that you can look for on this hike. This chart of all these beautiful North American central birds that you can spot. Another list of all these tracks that we can look for to see if we can, determine what made certain tracks. And then on one side is, of course, one that says leaves of 3, let it be, which those are poison oak and poison ivy. And there's a big, giant picture of poison oak on this to make sure we stay away from it. We were all going together. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't just Mason and I trucking out into the woods. I know what poison oak and poison ivy look like. And so they give us these things, and everything's going great. We're tracking around the one side of the river or the pond, and we spot some deer tracks. And the kids are like, "Oh, and these are deer tracks." And we keep moving, and we're getting into the trees. And I thought, okay, we haven't seen very many tracks, but we're getting into the trees, so we'll be able to look at some leaves. So as we get into the tree line, the first thing that Scott, the scout leader, goes, "Oh, come over here, come over here." And I'm all excited. "Oh, where are we going to go look at?" And he says, "See this down here? This is poison oak. Nobody go any further than this. This is poison oak over here. Okay, it's really bad. You want to get in there. Make sure that if you. Of course, Mason's got shorts on, and I'm like, okay, all right." So we walk about 6 more paces, and he goes, "Okay, come over here. Look at this. Do you see this over here? This is poison ivy. So we got to stay out of this. This is bad." So we spend probably 30 feet walking down this path, and everything is, "Hey, this is poison ivy, this is poison oak, this is poison ivy, this is poison oak, this is poison oak, this is poison oak." And I'm like, oh, God, okay, this can't get any worse. Until he gets up and goes, "Oh, come here, I want to show you something." So we all go up, and he's touching a leaf on a tree. And I'm like, okay, we have found a leaf that we can identify. He pulls something off the leaf, and he goes, "Do you see this? This is a tick." You don't want these. In fact, when we get back, all of the kids need to maybe check for ticks. Everybody needs to check for ticks. Adults, kids, check all crevices. We don't want ticks. We spend another 30 feet identifying every tick on the trail amongst the poison ivy and the poison oak. We haven't looked at a dang tree yet. Death. We haven't looked at anything worthwhile yet. The only thing we've seen so far are the deer track we discovered the first time. So we get in deeper into the woods, and we walk up to this tree that Scott's going, "Do you know what this tree is?" And we're like, okay, well, finally there's a tree.
Poisonous.
He says, "This is and I can't remember what he called it, something sage." He said, "This is an invasive tree that they don't want in Kansas, and they're bad, but they grow up, and you can identify them because they have these really spiky little things. That's how you identify the male trees. They've got these spikes on them."
I've got some of those growing in my
pavement. This ugly, deadly tree. And I'm going, okay. He says, we don't like these trees, but we know, that they suck the life out of trees around them. So now we've done poison oak, poison ivy, bad. Ticks, bad. This weird sage tree, bad. Okay, moving on. So we go on down, and he goes, oh, I want to show you these. Okay, what is this? And it's these really tall shoot plants that have all these little spikes on them, and a top that's got this beautiful flower on the top. And when you look inside, it's got these prickly spikes on it. What is that? What's a prickly? I keep thinking he said prickly pear, but I think he said prickly something else. He says, "You don't want these. These are invasive plants. Don't touch these. As soon as you touch one, it will go it'll go right into your fingers, and it'll burn, and it'll sting, and you won't be able to get rid of the pain for it." So now we've had poison ivy, poison oak, ticks, these invasive trees, and now an invasive plant that we can't touch because it's beautiful, and it'll sucker you into touching it, and then you get pricked by it, and it hurts.
Scott's a ray of sunshine.
Great. So,
Scott's the
still
doctor.
Haven't seen any pretty birds.
We're going to take you on this tour of the universe, but first we're going to run into Dalek, Cybermen, Zygots.
Still haven't identified any gorgeous trees. We've cleared the clearing of the woods on the other side. And they take us back into this little Juttendalf area. And he looks down and he goes, "Oh, leeches." He said, you don't have to worry about those. And I'm like, what? He says, that's a pile of leeches and they're dead. He goes, it must have been some animal's food, because if you look over here, do you know what this is? This is scat. You know what scat is? Scat is animal droppings. So you know there's an animal in the area. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to look at the bright side of it. At least there's an animal in the area that we might have a chance to see. Scott scurries up another 5 feet, 10 feet, 10 paces. Walks up, looks down, and goes, oh, come here. Everybody gathers around, and he says, can anybody identify these tracks? Okay, so all the kids are scurrying. They're looking through it.
The North American leech killer.
Finally, some little kid goes, I found it. And he says, okay, what is it? And he goes, skunk. And Scott says, good job, you're right. There's a skunk somewhere around here. So we're going to clear back and go around. We went all the way around the lake and saw everything that can hurt, kill, maim, or just completely make your day a misery. Never saw anything else. And we got around and I thought, you have now horrified these kids.
They're never going to go into the woods
I'm
again.
panicked because now I think Mason has picked up poison ivy, poison oak, because he's walking through this treacherous area with shorts on. He's probably got 30 ticks on him because as we're walking back, he finds ticks on 2 of the other boys. And we're
leeches.
All but running from a skunk that might be in the area. And we get back, and thankfully it was dinner time. But it was really a lot of fun because Mason was just enjoying it so much that it just was vicariously sucking up his enjoyment. Even though my legs hurt by the end, I was exhausted. I knew I was going to go home and find ticks, everything. But
well, you know what the kids probably learned? Nature is dangerous.
That's exactly the impression that I got, and I guess maybe that's good to teach them young.
And it's
because
an
by
important
the time,
lesson to learn.
And you weed out the ones that are like, well, I'm not doing that again. Mason was ready to go back. He wanted to go back camping out the next weekend, or wants to go camping out next weekend. So, the thing though that we did is I got home and I told him shower's first thing you do. So he goes in there, and of course I checked him over to make sure there was no ticks or anything. He got in the shower, got out. My turn. Take clothes off. Start checking. Tick.
You had one?
I had one, but it was a little tiny, and it hadn't even clamped on yet.
Oh,
so
good.
I just crushed him, flushed him.
Yeah, there you go.
He was gone. Anyway, that was my weekend.
Quite an eventful weekend.
Indeed, it was. Probably more than anybody wanted to know about my weekend, but good thing I didn't do anything else the rest of the week.
First up in news, after being missing last year, Doctor Who is going to have a presence at San Diego Comic-Con.
Yay!
Peter Capaldi, Stephen Moffat, Jenna Coleman, and Michelle Gomez will all have all be on a panel.
Yay!
That's in July, is that right?
That's in July. And so this is Peter Capaldi's first ever San Diego Comic-Con.
That's very cool.
So it'll be very exciting for her and for him. And I'm pretty sure it's Michelle Gomez is also. I didn't see that reported anywhere, but I don't know her other stuff well enough to know if she had gone.
Now, did Jenna go with Matt a few years back?
I believe so.
Because
2 years ago.
I do remember Matt, Amy, and
Rory.
Well,
Arthur.
Arthur and
Karen.
Yeah, the 3 of them went. And then the next year, Matt and Jenna went.
Okay.
And then the year after that, they didn't go.
Right, I knew they didn't go
Peter's
last year.
first one. So.
Well, very cool. Well, if anybody's going to be in San Diego on the weekend of Comic-Con and is going, and you want to send us some correspondence, just tell us how the weekend went and check in with us, and you can either write to us or you can record some audio and we'll play it on the show.
We'd love to have some frogs on the street.
Yep. Speaking of conventions,
I thought he was going to say speaking of frogs.
Our local Doctor Who convention has a pretty cool new feature they're going to have. They're going to play Celebrity Whose Line Is It Anyway?
The clever part is that the S and E in whose is actually in parentheses. It's whose line is it anyway?
So participants will use Doctor Who-related props, cues, and script segments to develop comedy skits while competing for points and prizes alongside Doctor Who actors.
Yes.
Are they prizes of epic game show proportions?
He did not put that in the article, so I don't know.
Not everybody can be you, Sean.
No, that's very true.
Well, we're hoping that
everybody wants to be,
no,
but not everybody can.
We're hoping to be involved with that as well, because I think it'll be a lot of fun. So,
at the very least, it'll be fun to be in the audience.
Yeah, just watching would be a hoot.
In other news, Peter Capaldi recently has said in Doctor Who magazine that he is very eager to see Carol Ann Ford reprise her role as Susan on the show.
As I think a lot of us are.
I think so
that
too.
Would be neat. It'd be quite interesting to revisit Susan at this age now.
Oh, yeah.
And if, because clearly a Time Lord, if they don't live as adventurous a life as the Doctor, they can actually stretch their...
they can live a very
long time in one generation. One... What am I looking for?
Isn't it in the wasn't it in the animated Shada that when he comes back and Romana asks him what regeneration you're on, and he says 7th, and she goes, "Oh my God, you're burning through them."
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah,
because she's still
on 2.
The same, yeah.
But this all comes from when Carol Ann Ford visited the set during last Christmas, and so she was talking to Doctor Who magazine about it. And saying how it was great and lovely to meet him, and she, of course, is willing and ready to reprise her role.
Well, and she has reprised her role in Big Finish, very willingly to do so, and she's come back a few times and done the role, so she's still familiar with it, and she's still very much connected to the Susan character, and so I think that would be just wonderful to have her.
And while I would have loved to have seen her sooner, I think she and Capaldi will have...
They would have such great chemistry.
A special chemistry.
I think so.
Yeah. Maybe even a better one than maybe Matt or David or Chris would have had with her.
I think it would kind of be like Tennant and Elizabeth Sladen's chemistry they had together.
Yeah.
Because he was such a fan, and there's that aspect of it. And while Matt Smith had great chemistry with Elizabeth Sladen and Joe Grant, it just quite wasn't the same when he was with them.
Well, not to mention Capaldi's the closest to any of the Doctors that would have been around at the time that Susan was. In fact, he would have been very young, but he'd have been quite young when she was the companion, but I think he would have been around because he's 50...
He's 50. Maybe he's 56 now. We've had 56. A birthday, haven't we?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, just recently, I think. Yeah, so
he would at least been old enough to see her departure and remember it. Indeed, at the very least. So.
Yeah, very cool.
Bring it
Excited
on
for that.
I'm ready for Susan.
Yeah, bring it on.
And our last bit of news is that Big Finish recently announced back in March that they had gotten the Doctor Who license for another 5 years. But now they are saying that the main range is going to continue until March of 2020 at least.
Yay!
Which is encouraging, and I absolutely love this. I can't help but wonder at what point the 5 guys that are still participating as doctors might, although they really put them on a good spread out schedule where they're really only doing like 3 a year, because as they alternate through doctors,
it'd be just the 4 for the main.
Oh, you're right. It would be 4 for main range. Well, they could, but they could
Paul
bring
is now off as on his own again.
Well, but they could bring and Tom's never been part of the main range, with the exception of the 50th anniversary, which in itself is not part of the main range. It's its own thing. So really, there's only 3 of them that are officially still in the main range, and Tom but they can always be brought into the fold. Yeah. But what my point is, of the 5 guys doing Doctor Who of
the 5 doctors,
that are doctors, I can't help but wonder if they would look at 5 years and go, I've committed since. 3 of them at the very least. Well, even Paul was around back then. Have committed since they launched in 99, 98, 99.
21 years ago, I think.
Yeah. So it's amazing that they've been around this long, and I think we've been very blessed that they enjoy doing it. they like to do it because they can continue that to do those characters that they obviously still love because they do them, but not have to worry about the ardent television schedule and costumes and things like that.
Well, and that's the nice thing is it's enjoyable and it's not time consuming.
Yeah.
They go into
a
studio
for 2 days
for 2 days.
and they're done.
Yeah.
But
and sometimes for a whole year.
I kind of wonder
done.
at what point do any of the 3 to 5 guys go, I'm just really tired. But they don't seem to be, and so that's very encouraging. But to put another 5 years on it kind of makes me wonder if they say, well, can we do this a little more clever and figure the schedules out a little differently?
I would think that because of the way they do them, I imagine that it's very much you're going to come into the studio for a week. And you're going to record.
It's usually not even a week.
Yeah.
They're usually in there for 2 days. I think there's 1 day of reading and then 2 days usually in studio, and that's it. And if you do that 4 times a year, that's hardly any days out of the year.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it can't. And all of these guys that we're dealing with, I mean, at least when you talk about the main ones, you're talking about the ones that have been there from the beginning. We're talking about Peter Davis and Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy. They've all expressed over and over and over again what a joy it is to work with Big Finish, how happy they are to do it, that they love doing it. I don't think they're going anywhere. Bringing Paul into the fold, the fact that they've kind of spun his doctor off into his own little things with these box sets and whatnot, that they're kind of main range related, but not necessarily, depending on how you want to look at it. I think that's just kind of how they're choosing to encapsulate the Eighth Doctor.
Agreed.
He's obviously happy to continue to come back. Tom's kind of the unknown element, but as long as they keep him happy, and even if he's off in his own little thing, okay, whatever.
So. Well, I think that was a calculated move to give Tom his own starring vehicle, I think is what sweetened the pot for bringing him back.
Yeah.
Not that Tom's enjoying him, if Tom is enjoying himself, and he seems to be, I could see them folding him into main range, especially knowing that, he's the oldest of the bunch. And he's slowing down, and maybe him knowing that instead of coming in and doing, an entire season of his own stuff, being put into the fold and getting a little, lighter schedule in his golden years, that might even be encouraging for him as well.
Yeah.
So.
Big Finish is also offering a subscription priced at £350 that will take you all the way through 2020.
So you can start
does
now.
That include back catalog, or is that starting now too?
Starting with between story number 216 and 221. If you're able to start from 221, you'll be placing an order for every single episode from January 2017 to March 2020.
So there you go.
And that will save you $200. £200.
The good news is that that's going to give us plenty of material for this show to continue for 5 more years at the very least. So
this just in, Traveling the Vortex announces they'll be on the air.
No. Don't do that. Not that we're going anywhere time soon, but I want to lock us into 5 years.
You all heard that here first. Glenn is the dissenting vote.
Glenn's the Paul.
He's the Paul.
Well, if you hadn't brought Yoko on board, I might know.
You brought Yoko on board.
That it?
For news.
God, I'm not the Yoko, am I? Tell me I'm
No.
not the Yoko.
No. We don't have a Yoko.
Oh, good. Ugh.
Wouldn't we technically need a fourth to then be able to have a fifth be Yoko?
I was just truncating the quartet to a trio, but
okay. Up next is our Doctor Who Legacy
Tip of the week.
We're going to do kind of a truncated tip. I didn't have a lot of time this week, but I did just want to quickly point out, in conjunction with my last week's tip, that there is a level that you can do in conjunction with last week's tip. If you recall, last week I talked about the Chapter 2 story, Wedding of River Song, Weakest Link, which was the one where you could go in, and I still never looked up Mark Annis's actual character name, but the opponent in the live chest in the episode Wedding of River Song, that is a single enemy, one wave, pretty easy to tackle level that if you've got a pretty decent character roster on a team, and you could take other characters in there that are very low and level up quickly, because the experience is a pretty good amount. I wanted to point to that this week with the 150 experience point being moved to Chapter 3. The one, and there may be others, but in Chapter 3, Tobias Zed is another one of those chapters where when you go into it, it is a single enemy, one wave that is relatively manageable. Now, I will warn people that whereas last week's, you could go in with a pretty, probably even team of 30 or 40 and manage it well, I would not suggest trying to do this level with very many low levels on your team. In fact, I'd have at least a 40 on
What
there, maybe more. It's in Chapter 3. And because that's where they've moved the 150 this week. But it's Tobias Zed, and obviously that's Toby, who you do. I think you actually drop him in this level as a companion. But if you go into this one, it's another one of those ones that's quite an easy take. It does drop the upper tier time fragments, so you're not going to get some of the lower ones that you frequently need more often. There's no blues, reds, yellows, greens. It does occasionally drop a pink, but if you're looking for one that I can do it, I want to say it's like 3,200 experience. I haven't finished the level yet, so I couldn't tell you exactly, but when I get a good setup here, I want to say it's like 3,200, somewhere around there, experience. So again, another large dose of experience for one. But again, I would suggest going into that level with very low level teams. That's a simple, quick one. It's kind of a repeat of last week, but I wanted to point out that there is a option to do that. I did also want to take this moment to thank somebody last week who, as you remember, I was saying that it was one of the other benefits of playing the Wedding of River Song Weakest Link is because when you in the fan areas where most people go and they play the Jenny level, because that is another one wave level, and you can quickly level up that way as well if you're doing it. And we were just pointing out that if you went into Chapter 2 last week, you would get the 150, plus you would have a better option of dropping pink time fragments. And it was pointed out to us this week by, it's at Cherie McDonald. Thank you for listening to the show. She pointed out that there are actually 3 levels, at least, that drop pinks in the fan area. The one that I mentioned, which was Fragment Hunt Pink, which I knew of. And I had forgotten that Last Christmas and Fragment Hunt Random also drop pink in the fan area now. So you do have some more options in the fan area to get pink time fragments. Unfortunately, those 3, the experience level isn't very high. So it was still kind of a benefit to be doing that in the one we pointed out that last week. But I did want to point out that I was incorrect, and she corrected us, and we certainly appreciate that as well.
And
that's your Doctor Who Legacy
Tip of the week.
Shall we move on to... do we want to talk any more about Legacy while we're here? We might as well. You guys got anything to bring up? Sean, you had something you'd forgot to talk about last week. Do you want to talk about this week?
No, I'm good.
For real?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Like I said, Mel beat chapter 3.
You didn't want to talk about the loading screen?
Oh, yeah, the loading screen. Have you guys noticed the loading screen is witty?
It is witty.
And it changes sometimes. It's not the same every time I load the game.
Instead of just loading, it brings up these little things like,
I can't get my game
cleaning the pool and or adjusting sick bay, or I think it's cleaning sick bay.
Cleaning sick bay.
16 fast return switch.
Tracking Davros.
So as you
staring at weeping angels.
As you wait for it to load, you get to read little funny things.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of clever too.
It amuses me.
I like it.
It's the interesting thing too is the Tiny Rebel Games team, the Doctor Who Legacy team. They really know how to just add little bits and pieces that make this fun. Even if it's not, adding a new level or new levels or adding new characters, or every week they're doing something just a little bit different to add to the nuance of this game. And I think that's just, it tells you how much that team loves this game. We're more than a year in, and they're still showing the love to fans and their enjoyment of producing this game for fans. And I think I can't but rave more about how I just think this game is phenomenal and that team is wonderful. So we thank you.
I was wrong on the level I'm at. I'm at Dalek Legacy.
Well, how far is that? Is that past Tobias?
No.
Oh. So you're still... So this tip's going to do nothing for Keith. And
it's just past the Charlie levels.
As Sean pointed out last week, it's going to do nothing for Time Lord Ben, who has maxed everybody out. Doesn't need experience.
Speaking of Time Lord Ben, he is first up with feedback. Ben writes, here's what I did this week. Hey guys, sorry I've not written in for a bit. I've been listening though. I did get a big chuckle during the last episode when Sean mentioned me during the Legacy Tip of the Week. I continue to stay up on the game in terms of having all the characters and maxing out stars and level-wise. Getting there was a chore, maintaining it, not so much. I've run out of tips for the game per se, but I've noticed that the reflect attack is back in play. And it had made a debut a while back, but had been removed due to it not working properly. My tip would then be to pay close attention to the color being reflected back and not matching those gems for the number of turns indicated in the opponent's attack.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you that really dogged me.
Where is that at?
It's in the chapter 4 levels, and that really dogged me. And that goes back to Lee giving us that tip that don't rely on single color teams, because I was playing. Fortunately, because most of my characters are level 50, they've at least got 2 colors, but I was playing a very dominant yellow team that everybody had a yellow, and that was their primary color. And I ended up against somebody that was reflecting back yellow. So what happens is when you hit them, they damage you back, because it's reflecting some of your, not all of it, but it's reflecting some of your damage back onto your team.
Worst attribute ever.
Oh man, but I love it because it adds a new element to the game.
It's there.
But boy, that dogged me for a while, because I thought, I got to go in here and find a different team to play this with, because it is just not working out for me.
Ben continues with, next, an apology to Glenn. I've not been involved in the book club for a while, and therefore I've not been on Goodreads a lot. I popped in there to update a book I'm reading. I noticed that he had sent me a friend request there 3 months ago. Whoops.
That is certainly okay, Ben. Goodreads is one of those things that I...
Did you rectify it? Are you friends now?
Yeah, we are friends.
Don't leave us hanging, Ben.
He did, and I appreciate your response. Those are some of those things when I get suggestions as to who I know that's on Facebook or Twitter, and it often tips me off and says, "Hey, your so and so friend is on Goodreads." And or even if I come across them in comments, like the book club, I think is where I stumbled across Time Lord Ben at. And so if I know who they are, then a lot of times I'll send the friend request or okay, the friend request. And so it's one of those things that there's no need to apologize, because when you sent me that, I was just as bad, because I thought, I'd forgotten I'd sent that. So it wasn't like I was waiting on bated breath, but I certainly am glad that we are friends on Goodreads as well. So I can read some of your reviews of some of the things that you've done.
Moving on, my free comic book day comic arrived in the mail this weekend.
Yay!
I've yet to read it, but plan on doing that tonight yet. I enjoyed the post-it note attached immensely. The personalized note along with the art was really nice. Good job, Sean.
You're very welcome.
Did you put art on there too?
I doodled, yes.
I didn't see the doodle. I just saw
scarves. Did they all get scarves? Or they?
I do remember seeing the
scarf. They all got a little something different.
Well, write in and tell us what you got on your doodle.
Or take pictures.
Or take pictures. That's what Time Lord Ben did. He tweeted us.
Yeah.
Just as a side note, since he brought it up, we should mention this is the start of a new month, and therefore the book club is the start of a new book. The book for this month is Lethbridge Stewart, The Forgotten Son.
Stealing Holly's thunder.
Did she talk about that?
I think she did. It's all right. We'll talk about it again.
Never mind.
She may not. She usually does. I kind of skimmed through her feedback.
I haven't read any of the feedback yet, so I just hey, there's a segue. I'll sit quietly and wait.
I know something else we could point out, but I'm afraid that one of the ladies have also pointed this out in their feedback, so I'm waiting until feedback's done before I say anything about it.
Well, let's move on to feedback. Lastly, I finally...
You mean move back into feedback?
Move back into feedback. Lastly, I finally got around to filming my Doctor Who smartphone-controlled K9. It has been posted on YouTube as it ran 8 minutes and 5 seconds in length. I tweeted the link to the Travel Vortex Twitter account.
Wait, the video or K9? Because you got ripped off of K9.
Depending on the episode, that's about right for battery life.
Battery depleted.
I tweeted the link to the Travel Vortex Twitter account, but it can also be searched directly on YouTube using the above description. There's more than one video of that toy. Mine is posted by Ben Reed and runs the aforementioned time.
So there's a link we should include in the show notes, Glenn.
I filmed it myself. I'm no professional, so please accept any apologies for my wonkiness. I believe that's it for the moment, guys. Thanks for everything. Take care. Time Lord Ben. That wasn't everything, however. And he wrote back saying, I knew I would forget something. I meant to mention in my first email that this week I watched a few movies. Hence the what I watched this week. I got HBO Now just prior to Game of Thrones starting this season, but until now I've yet to watch anything else. So this weekend I explored a little. I first watched Ender's Game. I really liked it. Now, I don't see movies the same as you guys. Things like lighting and camera angles don't generally register with me. Having said that, this was a great movie to me. I know that recently one of you guys had mentioned the sequel was unlikely. I hope that's not the case. The next day, I watched Divergent. Again, awesome movie. In this case, assured of a sequel. My cousin who lives in LA is now working on that film, Insurgent. Didn't the Insurgent already come out?
Insurgent came out. Allegiance, the next one.
That must be what he's working on. He's applying 3D effects to that film. Both Ender's Game and Divergent are movies I would highly recommend and would definitely watch again. Anyhow, that's really it this time, guys. Take care, everybody. Time Lord Ben.
Wait a minute. Not everybody pays attention to lighting and camera angles and things like that.
That just seems crazy.
That does seem crazy. What is wrong with you?
Crazy talk, Ben.
What is wrong?
Thank you, Ben. Good to hear from you
Thank
again.
you very much.
Up next is Chrissy.
Chrissy writes, before River Song, there was Bernice Summerfield. Dear Vortex Boys, quick correction from last week's podcast. The guy who played Siegfried in All Creatures was Robert Hardy, who actually played Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic, in Harry Potter, not Barty Crouch. Yep. You are correct, Chrissy. I thought about that as soon as we signed off.
I did too.
I
wasn't
walked you guys off.
It was after I got home and I was editing, and I thought, should I insert something as an edit going, footnote? But I just left it alone.
I thought of it literally, like right as I started to drift off to sleep. I woke up in a panic and went, Fudge! But he didn't say fudge. Okay, Professor Bernice Summerfield. She is definitely a character that I've been meaning to get into more of her stories. But then I go to the Big Finish website and see how many stories they have in her range, and my wallet screams in terror. But by going these two audio stories, I might just tell my wallet to be quiet and get some of her stuff anyway, because now I want to hear more. Or I could read the Bernice Summerfield books if I can find them for relatively cheap. Shadow of the Scourge. The main thing I noticed about this one was how adult it was. Not overtly, but there was more grown-up topics dealt with this, particularly with the characters that were trapped in the hotel and the fears and regrets they had. Things like ex-lovers and new babies and stuff with older parents and some others that I can't remember right now, but I probably will later. Even Ace and the Doctor seem a bit more mature in their personalities than they do when they're in other stories. Maybe that's a product of the Bernice book series being more adult, or so I've heard, so that element carries over into the audio stories with her. I don't know, but it's certainly something I noticed. As far as the story goes, it was pretty good. Not my favorite, but enjoyable still. Definitely something that could only work in audio. The Dark Flame. I will probably have to listen to this one again to get the full effect of what was going on. Either I wasn't paying attention very well, likely, or there were so many twists and surprises that it was hard to keep up with it. The Doctor is definitely in his sneaky grand chessmaster mode, which is fun to see if a bit creepy. Ace is full-blown brawn to the Doctor's brain, but even more so than on TV. But I do like Ace and Benny's friendship, almost like sisters. They play off each other really well, and they're great foils to one another. It almost seems like a mature version of Jamie and Zoe, where they have great chemistry and teamwork together, and they both just roll with whatever the Doctor's doing because, well, that's just the Doctor. I think that relationship is what I like best about these two stories. Bernice and Ace playing off each other. I kind of hope there are more stories with these two as companions. That's all I've got. I did get my free Comic Book Day prize. Thanks again. I didn't make it out for free Comic Book Day, and I was kind of bummed that I didn't, so I'm glad you all gave me a second chance to get one. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you later. Bye for now, Chrissy. Thanks, Chrissy.
Thank you, Chrissy. And our last bit of feedback
But not least,
from
Holly. Holly writes, The Shadow of the Scourge and Dark Flame. Hey guys, I have to say that I really enjoy the pairing up of the Seventh Doctor, Ace, and Bernice. I wouldn't even mind if Bernice and Ace went off on some of their own adventures. Bad guys beware. Both audios were good and moved along at a good pace. I'm also trying to go off of memory here. It's been a while since I listened to them last. I do remember myself chuckling in The Shadow of the Scourge when the Doctor being led around the crafting areas and mentioning something about cross-stitch. I thought the Doctor was more of a knitting sort of guy, unless that's the Eighth Doctor. In the Dark Flame, I love how the Doctor mentions that he is like the butterfly in the butterfly effect. Though I do think he's done more good than harm. A brief note before I wrap up, a reminder that the June book of the month for Traveling the Vortex Book Club on Goodreads is Lethbridge Stewart, The Forgotten Son by Andy Franken Allen. Looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts on these two audios. Holly from Wisconsin. Thank you, Holly.
Thanks, Holly.
Thanks for that reminder, Holly. I didn't know that.
And I'll use this to segue into another thing that the ladies over at the Five-ish fangirls tend to spearhead from time to time, and particularly Brittany. If you'll go to, there'll be a link in the show notes, a geeky girl without a box.blogspot.com. She has posted, and they have collectively come up with this list, the 30 Days of Channel Surfing Photo Challenge. They're stepping away from the usual ABCs of photo challenges to do this one. She says, since most of our shows are on their breaks until fall, I have decided on a TV show theme for June. So my fellow hosts over at the Five-ish Fangirls podcast and I came up with the entries for each day of June, and here's the list. Let me read the list or just post it? Just read what we did today?
Well,
just to give everybody a
day
flavor.
One was favorite opening titles.
So we all posted.
This was a tough one.
It was a tough one.
You even posted today, right,
I
Sean?
did post today.
So we
look at me
on day one.
on
day one, you weren't playing catch up.
With the ABCs, I almost feel like it can be. Because, there's only 26 of those in a whole month. I want to give people some things to look forward to at the end. But when you put it day one, it's like, oh, now I got it. Now I'm committed.
I was impressed with myself last month because not only did I not fail the challenge and drop off like halfway through, which I've been known to do, but I actually, for the most part, with the exception of a couple of days, stayed caught up because I did do day by day. I think I had come in on day 3, so I did have to catch up my first 3. And I think there was another one in the middle there at some point that I had forgotten and posted later and then posted another one. But I was actually patting myself on the back for completing that challenge.
I was in a bit of a panic because I had it planned out that, okay, so I got up to you and I was like, well, great, I've got like a whole week left, it seems like, at the end of the month here that I can, I'll do a couple on this day and a couple on this day to finish it out and be done. And then kind of spaced it off and got up to, today's the 31st and I have 5 of these things I need to post. And of course I had thought about them ahead of time and kind of sort of knew what I wanted to do, and then got to one of them that I hadn't thought about and was like, no, this is a hard letter too. So
most of us do that until we hit that letter and we go, I'll come back to that. And then the day comes and you're like, oh, I'm on that letter. That was the hard one because I skipped it. So
I hate when I make a list and forget I make a list. And then
you ever get mad at yourself like you have a perfect one and you're like, yay, and then you kind of forget that you had that one all set up and you go and you do something else and then you think about it afterwards like,
I've done that multiple times.
I did that, yeah. But this one looks like a lot of fun. It's all TV themed and TV based, and there's a lot of good ones on here. And we'll post a link to the list. When I post the list, we're going to post a link to the list, and you can go to the Brittany's website and look at their collaboration.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Are we ready to review?
We're ready for reviews.
Yes!
Uh-oh. Buckle up, kids. It's going to be a long cast.
The Shadow of the Scourge.
Oh, wait. Sorry. Jumping the gun.
Scroll. Stupid computer. Scroll.
That's a terrible synopsis. I didn't get anything
I didn't get any of that.
Wow.
Sorry, my computer's not wanting to scroll. I blame TARDIS Wikia. Hold on. Go.
Well, quit letting TARDIS Wiki do your homework.
It's got my synopses.
Oh.
Let me explain. No, it's too much. Let me sum up.
2 weeks in a row. Good one, Sean. Get more material.
Have I done that one before?
Last week.
Really?
I assume he says this on a daily basis.
Sometimes I think he does this to put us on. He can't really not forget that much stuff.
No, I assure you I can.
All right, I got it working.
Hey, I had an idea. Let's do a Doctor Who podcast. We could get together. It would give us an excuse like every week to see you guys. And we could talk Doctor Who, which who needs an excuse for that?
I was waiting for him to say, you know what? Have you guys seen this Charlie?
Did we talk about that? No, I don't want to talk about that because he lives at your house.
No, he's not my house.
Mister, I
He was
dropped
trying to
every
discourage
piece of
me from
equipment
coming
I
to this
needed.
house. I think he thinks I'm going to come here and excise him.
No, I'm going to encourage you to drop every single piece of equipment you own. He lives at your house.
You keep bringing it up, we're going to have to tell people what happened.
Go ahead, Keith.
The Shadow of the Scourge. The Pine Hill Crest Hotel in Kent is host to 3 very different events. A cross-stitch convention, an experiment in time travel, and the summoning of the Scourge. The 7th Doctor, Bernice, and Ace find themselves dealing with a dead body that has come back to life, a mystical symbol that possesses its host, and a threat from another universe that is ready for every trick the Doctor's got up his sleeve. This time, has the Doctor gone too far? Now.
Gun!
Glenn loved it.
Man, I loved this story. Oh. I'll tell you, something adds to it, because I think maybe if I hadn't come into it this way, I probably would not have enjoyed it. It would have been a great story. The number one thing I keyed in on this story, and to an extent the next one that we're going to do as well, these are very much set in line with the same tone, feel, sound, story, darkness,
Flavor.
edginess, flavor of the, and I've only read 4 so far, the Virgin New Adventures, which, if you don't know, these are actually set during that time. A common theme in Doctor Who fandom is these are what are called, and the Virgin New Adventures are what are called side steps. The reason why it's been phonetically named that is because a lot of the things that happened in the New Adventures, because they were quasi-licensed, meaning Virgin took the stories and got the license and ran with it, they aren't always considered continuity, because for those that track continuity, because they don't necessarily jive with classic and new. You can't really bridge the two with them in most cases. I seem to find my head canon work it around so that I can when it necessitates that. But these are actually set between All-Consuming Fire and Blood Harvest, and those were 2 stories in the Virgin New Adventures.
Oh.
So if you're going to take these and place them in some sort of continuity time stream, that's where they go. And what number was this? So we determined it was 7 or 13. Was it 7?
13.
It was 13. Okay. I am so impressed that Big Finish, so early on, felt that it would be a neat idea to set an adventure in that quote-unquote universe.
Yeah.
Because with Classic Who, I think it was probably at the time close enough to the Virgin New Adventures having still been fresh in a lot of fans' minds, who that's how they continued their fandom, was through the New Adventures. But when they started this series out, they particularly went and did 5, 6, and 7 stories that were very well connected to the classic series, and nothing that would really had come after the classic series had finished on television. And certainly, between the movie and Survival. And so I was very impressed that they chose to do something in this quote-unquote universe. And just listening to these really sparked that excitement that I had when I read the Time Worm tetralogy. There's just a certain edge to the Doctor. There's a certain style. There's a certain darkness. There's something that I felt that had the Cartmel Master Plan been allowed to continue beyond season 26, I think this is kind of where we would have gone with the Doctor.
Well, and especially with the manipulative Doctor that we get.
Yeah, and the exploring his more darker side, his anger and his insecurity. I mean, it tackles a lot of that, and it just for that sheer that the story is good. It's a solid story. I thought it was quite enjoyable. From one turn to the next, I didn't know what was going to happen, but just that scope and feel of it was enough to just suck me right into it. And again, I'm coming from having read 4 of the novels, and this actually excited me to continue. In fact, I've picked up Cat's Cradle now, and I'm getting ready to start it this week as well. So,
just for you continuity gurus, this story is actually set. Where did it go?
This really makes him sound bad, doesn't it? Is it between All-Consuming Fire and Blood Harvest,
Did you
Sean?
do that?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know you did that. I stepped away from it.
Did you forget already?
I stepped away.
I know. That's why I said this makes him sound really bad if we let him go through with this without explaining that he walked away.
You should stop
He
me.
went to the little vortex in the bathroom.
I did.
The little vortex in the bathroom.
Gary Russell comments in Glenn's Big Finish Companion Volume 1, which I'm going to pick up and read out of because he never does.
I was going to, but then you grabbed it. So.
Paul was one of the first writers I approached when Big Finish got the license. Naturally, I wanted Paul to write me a Doctor Who that had the character of Bernice Summerfield in it. We had to wait a bit because Virgin and the BBC were still a bit iffy about each other, and Stephen Cole said we'd be better off waiting for the upper echelons to cool off. So we did. Had to make a few changes to it, but I think it's very Paul-like script and very true to the New Adventures, says Gary Russell. So that fits right in with what you were saying. That
qualifies what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd read that as well. Not while you were gone. Don't worry. We didn't let you just repeat something again. Anyway, what did you guys think of it? Because, I mean, I'll certainly chime in when we talk about some of the plot details, but what did you guys think?
I found it very enjoyable. I agree. It has that dark Seventh Doctor that I've kind of grown to expect from the Big Finish, and even more so in this. Compared to the other Big Finish that they've done with him, this takes him the darkest I think he's gone. And I found it fascinating to listen to. And Bernice was such a great character throughout the entire thing that kind of helped balance out that darker Doctor and let Ace kind of be in between and almost, to some extent, fall a little bit back, but then be able to do some really bold things with her character, like piercing her eardrum so she can go deaf, and still have Bernice to be able to do the other Ace things that Ace can't do. So there's a lot about it that I really liked.
I can't speak from experience, as I said, because I haven't read a lot of the New Adventures, but at one point in the new series, Ace actually leaves.
Oh, they reference it in this.
She goes off and she joins Space Fleet and becomes a Dalek hunter.
Yeah,
and in fact,
yeah,
I think there's a story, I think it's Deceit, where she actually works alongside a clone of Absalom Dak, Dalek killer. And so that's where the reference
Thank
to
you for finishing his name there.
So that's the reference to the device that she's using that she describes as something they use to pry the domes off of Daleks. And, of course, you've seen some of the art where she's in the complete black jumpsuit with the aviator glasses. That was certainly her look at the time in the books as well, because that was kind of the Space Fleet look.
So is that also post-Colditz direction they were going with.
It is post-Colditz, and that's the interesting thing is, and I picked up on this.
She leave with the same...
Well, I had picked up on this. I think I brought this up when we had done Colditz, and what was the one where they go to South America or Latin America, and she meets her brother, right? Did we do that one or did
I remember that one. Rapture.
I got to thinking, wait, did I do that on my own?
The Rapture?
The Rapture.
That's what it was, yeah. Ace had started down a path in the New Adventures where her character really changes. Even in the first 4 books that I read, her character really starts to evolve and change and become a much darker and more brooding and more, I don't want to say sinister, but on the side of just cold. She's very cold. And what I think I liked about the early Big Finish that we listened to that had the Seventh Doctor and Ace is it was kind of this middle ground between Survival, where they left off, and where I feel time where Genesis picks up. And so they've kind of filled in that area where I think they, even Big Finish, thought, well, let's explore this and trend her towards the Ace that we begin to get in the new Adventures. And so, yes, Keith, this is sort of on the heels of some of those we've already...
where she's going towards that direction.
Yeah, where we
implying that she's going to leave. And
exactly. And in fact, at one point she talks about... she just called herself McShane to people in the Colditz story. And she even kind of meddled with the idea of just going by McShane. Well, I believe if my
that was where we left off, I think, in the last one. They call me McShane.
If my research is correct, she actually, that's what she does, is she becomes this very hardened warrior. The Doctor, we find out, without giving too much away, but I think this is kind of knowledge, we find out that the Doctor was actually not manipulating her, but grooming her for Time Lord Academy on Gallifrey. And so that's why he was having her explore a lot of her personal self, especially when you go back to the what is commonly dubbed the Ace Trilogy, where he shows her a lot of her past and allows her to discover a lot about herself. Well, the idea in the beyond what was going to happen was kind of more of that idea, exploring Ace's character and then Ace eventually leaving. I think even our Andrew Cartmel, I don't know if he told you that in the interview that you had with him.
Yeah.
They kind of explore that aspect of it in the New Adventures, and she becomes even more, separated and reclusive within herself. Not necessarily, physically reclusive, but she kind of goes, inside. And there's a lot of things that happen in the Time Worm series that kind of cause this as well. So at this point, she has actually returned to because then the Doctor ends up joining Bernice, and spends some adventures with her before Ace returns, and so this is actually shortly after Ace's return to the trio, and
Human Nature is one of those stories.
Human Nature is one of those stories set when Ace has gone and she's with Starfleet, and that was one of the things I think the books explore as well, as when it's revealed sort of that the Doctor was grooming Ace so that he could take her back to Gallifrey and put her in the Academy. And because he wanted great things for her. At that point is when she kind of shrugs that off and says, "No, I'm going to do my own thing," and they kind of part ways, and that's why she ends up going to Space Fleet, because she wants to do something with her life, take charge. She wants to be a warrior. She wants to do the things that you really kind of see glimmers of Ace in the early days. And I know this is a Benny companion. We'll get to that.
I was just going to say, I feel bad almost asking this question.
We will talk a lot more about Ace, obviously, down the road when we do some of those.
James came over and we watched Happiness Patrol, and he kind of asked me, I wonder what would have happened to Ace. And so I said, well, there's technically 2 different time tracks that, depending on which fandom you subscribe to, one is which that she does go and become a Time Lord on Gallifrey, and in one which she dies, and that she's not around anymore. And yeah,
I had never heard that.
You never heard that one? I'm curious to know.
It never came to fruition then.
Yeah,
it was something that was an idea.
Something that was an idea.
Okay.
Although again, I think it kind of depends on the medium, because I think in one of the either comics or books or something that they do offer, but
in the comics, I believe they did end up killing her character.
Because I just realized this too, that there's a
But she's still around and survives for the new.
Yeah, it's not until down the road, because there's even a comic that's in the, I want to say it's in one of the annuals that I've got, where she's wearing the all black outfit and they run into some Daleks, and so she kind of puts some of her skills to use there.
Well,
which makes a lot more sense now.
That's the interesting part about that, is because at one point, as the New Adventures were exploring the Dr. Ace stories, they do have some that kind of shoot into each other, and they actually at one point converged their timelines, and there are some that work side by side with what was happening in the New Adventures at that time. So, yeah.
But what made that interesting is that comment is we kind of followed that trail of logic down a rabbit hole and kind of went to the fact that if you look at Gallifreyan society that we get the glimpse of in Invasion of Time, where we've got the Time Lords up in the Citadel, and then you've got regular Gallifreyans kind of out living in bearskins and loincloths outside when Leela goes out and is stuck with them. And then you combine that with the Sisterhood of Karn, who say, well, we've always shared the elixir with the Time Lords, and kind of you get the idea that maybe Gallifreyans in general are a long-lived race, but maybe not quite immortal, and it's not until they get the elixir that they're able to regenerate.
When they become a proper Time Lord.
And so if Ace winds up at the Academy as a Time Lord, is it then now that she would have the ability to regenerate that she would be bestowed that? Is that something that Time Lords actually gift out, that it's not necessarily an innate?
We've seen other evidence of them gifting more regeneration. So
right. And it may not
be a
be,
logical step.
It just makes sense all of a sudden that it's not something maybe that you're born with the ability to regenerate until you become a Time Lord.
That's certainly postulating the idea, because she never did join the Time Academy in any time frame.
Right.
She was being groomed for it, but shunned it essentially. So, but yeah, could that have been the case?
I said that's more of an Ace thing down the road.
I think more on that topic. I think we that was a topic for another time as well. But the Time Lords, I think there's a lot more to that. I think that the elixir is certainly something that adds to the physiology of the Time Lords. But I think you also have to remember that there are Time Lords, and then there's your everyday Gallifreyans.
Right.
And at one time they were all one. But it wasn't until Rassilon's experiments and then harnessing of the black hole that the Time Lord Society was created.
Yeah.
And they were the ones that were able to basically monitor and lord over time. And then you had, and I can't remember what they're called, they're actually named in Leela's last story when she goes back to and ends up living with them. There's actually a name for the Gallifreyans that do not live in the Citadel. But that's a whole other thing as well. But yeah, I think that you guys are certainly on task with the long-lived society. But the Time Lords managed not only harness time, but immortality to a point.
It's just an interesting thought that, in my mind, if that's how that went down, that everybody has always identified the Doctor as a Time Lord. That's his race. And it may or may not be. It may be more of a title, but it's because it's been going on for so long that they all identify as Time Lords, just differentiate themselves from the other Gallifreyans or whatnot. I thought it was interesting. And my personal headcanon is that Ace does get there at some point. Now here's where I'm going to come down on this, is there were elements of this that I really, really, really liked. I love Bernice. Anything with Bernice, she's great. I love her character. I love her witticisms and her... what was your open? Feeble witticisms. Feeble witticisms.
That's actually from the next story.
I love her feeble witticisms. And I love her pragmatism. Pragmatism. I have only read Human Nature, so I don't have the huge background of Virgin New Adventure flavor.
Well, I don't think any of us have Bernie's flavor yet.
Yeah, no, not necessarily hers, but I mean, just in general. I mean, you're a leg up that you've got 4 stories into the Virgin New Adventure. I've got 1. But you've got 5 now, I guess, technically.
Yeah, 5. Only one of those with Bernie, though. So.
Right, but
Benny.
Yeah, but just that it's.
But the tone and the feel.
The tone and all that, I don't have that connection to it, because I remember when we reviewed Human Nature that I felt the book was quite a bit darker and kind of pushed that envelope, I think, almost as far, and in my mind, a little bit further than what I'm comfortable with my Doctor Who going. This felt like that. There was a lot of it that was kind of like, tonally, it was just a little too too out there for me.
When there's a lot of this stuff with the baby that the one character has, and a lot of that.
Was Annie her name?
Yeah, I think Annie. And that exploration, very adult idea. And then, which is kind of like one of those, that's kind of a touchy subject and a little uncomfortable. But then they wind up fixing the problem and doing the typical Doctor Who resolve everything so it has for the most part, happy ending.
Well, and that was another thing that honestly bothered me was the happy ending. I didn't like the fact that this had such a happy ending that, we've had this horrible sequence of events through the whole story, and that these people are being terrorized and killed left and right and mutated, and strange arms and galactic intrigue and huge otherworldly dimension beings are going to come through and demolish everything. And the Doctor plays it all off like it's not a big deal because he's got this master plan. And it's like, okay, we're going to get the scheming Doctor here. But then it all backfires, and he's not as smart as he thinks he is, and they were prepared for it, and he's thrown into this web of self-doubt and everything, and it's like, we've kind of talked about it, it's like, I don't like the Doctor to be completely oblivious. I like him to be, this one almost felt like it couldn't make up its mind. Do I want him to be this, lofty God who already knows the outcome? And then when he doesn't, it's suddenly thrown so far down the chain and knocked, a few pegs. It's not just knocked a few pegs down the ladder. He's all the way at the bottom of the totem pole and all this kind of stuff. And I'm not really a fan of that Doctor either. I like him to kind of be somewhere in the middle. And it bothered me that when he was the all-knowing Doctor, he was so cavalier about it. I mean, yeah, he had a plan, but people were dying.
Yeah.
There was a timetable here, and he didn't seem concerned about it. That really... I didn't like that. And then when he becomes withered in self-doubt, people are still dying. And it's like, you got to snap out of this, Doc. You got to fix this problem. Consequently, I loved Ace. I loved Benny, that they were able to kind of step up and at least be doing something. Now, Ace getting deafened, is this really the best plan we can come up with?
Well, I thought
it made sense.
It was a resourceful way for
exactly,
and a way to give gravity to the situation also.
Yeah,
and great characterization for Ace that she's willing to do this, to do whatever is necessary to defeat the enemy.
I think
third most painful thing.
I think what helps. Yeah. I think what helps with this story for me though is because it's considered quote unquote sidestep. I think that knowing the type of Doctor that we get in the sidestep adventures is a more darker, more reckless Doctor. I think it's nice to think of the Seventh Doctor as a little more controlling and knowledgeable of the situation, and having a plan, and having a plan B, and having a plan C, which we get back to in the Dark Flame, which we'll get to. But I like the idea of this Doctor not having so much of a control over situation, because I think a lot of times we fall into the trope of the Doctor coming in and having a plan all along and then just going through the motions of correcting things and fixing things. And sometimes they stumble and they sideswipe, but they always seem to come back and manage it. I kind of like this idea of the Seventh Doctor's darkness and recklessness working against him, and him having to really consider what to do next in order to, and kind of playing it, as he even mentions in one of these stories, I'm making this up as I go along. It was very Indiana Jones.
And see, I never buy that from the Seventh Doctor. 4, yes. 11, yes. 7, but I never believe that.
I think that one of the things that solidifies the fact that the Seventh Doctor always has a plan is Colditz, where he realizes that a future version of himself had to go and basically live out a certain life so that he could come back in order to rescue Ace, and then in turn, inadvertently himself from Colditz. But on the flip side of that, we have the story with Mel in the, what was it called? The Needle? I don't remember the name of the story, but they were living in that bubble, and there were the people on the inside that had completely devoided themselves of negative emotions, and then they had the ones outside that were harming themselves because they had that need and longing for those emotions that they had accessed within the sphere or the bubble or whatever it was. What they kept calling the tower or something.
They called it the Needle.
The Needle. And so there was quite a bit of the Seventh Doctor in that one, constructing the plan as he went along. And it was another thing that I think what helps this story, even though it is retroactively, Well, technically, it's not. If you really think about, if you try to put it all in one chronological timeline, those events do take place before this. But if you think about it, there was a lot. I even pointed out the fact that the Doctor's allowing a lot of death and destruction before he's able to kind of focus on what needs to be done. At the one time, the machine is killing off residents of the Needle as the Doctor is continuing to basically explain what he's going to do. And I remember saying, I was shouting at my iPhone saying, there's people dying here, Doctor. You could hurry up. I kind of like. I don't like that the Doctor does that in such a way, but I kind of like that we've explored this side of the Doctor that has kind of maybe been going that way as well. We also explore the recklessness of the Doctor in the Remembrance of the Daleks. Mm-hmm. The weird dichotomy of that is you feel like by the end of that, the Doctor had a plan all along. But there's a lot of moments where, as every surprise comes up, you still feel like he's constructing the plan as he goes. He has the one plan for the Hand of Omega. He does. He certainly has that. And you can tell from the very beginning that's why he arrived there, and he had a certain end goal. But you also, as Davros is revealed and as it's revealed what the Daleks are doing, the Doctor has no knowledge of what's happening, so he really feels like he's constructing. So there's those early stages as the Doctor... Red, yeah, thank you. As the Doctor progresses, he seems to be a little more of less of a pre-planner and more of a construct the plan as I go. And I kind of like that aspect. If you can take and look at all of this in a chronological sense, it almost makes sense as to maybe why, almost in the same way that the 10th Doctor was becoming so dark and lonely that he really needed to get to a regeneration point so that he could change. I kind of see a parallel with Seven in such a way as well, is that maybe because the Seventh Doctor was getting so reckless, it was necessary to change. Now, unfortunately, his demise is because he walks out of the TARDIS at the wrong moment, gets gunned down by gangland violence, but which really doesn't gel the darker they get, the more reckless they get with the Seventh Doctor. But I think that this is something that's also explored in this one is... But let me bring it back around to Benny, because... what I love about Benny and everything that I've experienced her in is Benny is the best counterbalance for the Doctor.
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
Benny is what I would equate Donna to the 10th Doctor. Benny is certainly not the same character, but in the relationship of the Doctor, she is the one that can see when the Doctor is getting maybe just a little too dark or thinking outside or being reckless. And she very much proves that in this, especially going in the one time, and he needs her. He wants her to come into his mind, which is a wonderful treat for me, because in one of the Time Worm stories, in fact, the last one, how you heard in this, Benny mentioned, Ace had been here before.
Yeah.
That actually happened in one of the stories. That's when it happened, was one of the stories I read. So that was a nice treat for me to go... In fact, as I was listening to this, I was going, they've done this before in the New Adventures. Ace was, and then he makes the comment. She makes the comment that Ace had mentioned that this had happened to her. And he even addresses the other generations in his mind. And they actually
the references to 8 were wonderful.
That was wonderful. They actually do have some interaction in Time Worm Revelation with the Seventh Doctor. Mm-hmm. But in this one, he makes the point that, they just kind of look on me with judgment. They don't interact as much. And so...
that's such a cool way to explore the past character of the Doctor at the same time.
Agreed.
And how... a great example of how he's still the same person and how the incarnations just step forward to take dominance. It's such a really cool idea to explore.
Well, especially by adding the idea of 8 being there, and him saying, "Well, that's one I haven't met yet." That was really kind of a neat, way to kind of visualize that or say it. But I like that Benny's very much the balance. She goes into his mind the one time to help him out, find out what needs to be done. She comes back out and takes it upon herself to go back in because she realized the Doctor needs to be saved. He needs it, and she's the one that's in there that is essentially she convinces him as he starts to go down that road once again of I continue to put my companions in danger, and I put them forth on the battlefield in order to do things that I'm afraid of doing. And they just that whole speech he's making and that passion when he's battling the scourge within his mind. And Benny is the one that actually convinces him that he needs the companions, that he shouldn't push them. It's something that's very much explored in New Who. He needs the companions, that he feels that he should push them away to keep them safe, to keep them out of danger, and that he's continually being selfish by putting them in danger all the time. And she's the one that essentially convinces him that, no, you need the companions because they're what make you make the best choices. And don't be reckless. And so she was this perfect counterbalance in here, which is what is needed in these particular stories. And I think even when we explore some of the new adventures, because Ace is taken down a completely different path. And if you look back, Ace has never been a balance for the Doctor. There's always been a professor-student relationship between the two. And they continue to do that through their timeline. So by bringing Benny in, who's a very grounded and wise person in her own right, she's very gifted with knowledge. She's that perfect person, and they seem to have this fun relationship when they chat with each other. I don't want to say they're on the same level, but maybe in a personal sense, they kind of are. They kind of respect each other. They have a certain respect for each other. And this story particularly really gives it that feel. And I think also, while at this point, Ace has become this warrior, this Dalek hunter, this very gung-ho, this I'm willing to do anything to advance on the battlefield, as far as going and having somebody pop my own eardrums, go through what she say, like the 7th most worst pain she's ever. Maybe it was even higher than that. But she said in the top 10 of worst pains, this is a 7 or something like that. Going through that, she's that type of character here. She's even that type of character. So she is that warrior. She's that soldier at this point. So you need Benny in order to be that person that can step back and look at the big picture and say, okay, this is Ace's role. This is the Doctor's role. I'm the one that does this. And I think that this story does an excellent job of portraying that.
Stepping back to the planning real quick, this is also a great example of both parts of the Doctor. Because he goes in with this great plan and it falls flat on its face. And then he has to make it up as he goes along. So you get both sides of the Doctor in this story, which is something I enjoyed. As uncomfortable as his original plan was for me. His plan of, I came in and, yes, we're going to give over this planet. And even when he gave his explanation of, well, we can do this, this, and this, and it will take care of the problem real quickly, it's still kind of like, that's quite a gamble to take, Doctor. And obviously, eventually it does pay off, but for a while it doesn't, because he has to make it up as he goes along.
Especially when it's revealed that that's the plan in episode 2. And you're like, yeah, it's not going to work. Come on.
Yeah. There's plenty of time left for it to get mucked up.
I think the problem that I have with this, with the planning stage is, Seven's become this manipulative Doctor that he's playing the chess games. Yes. I don't have a problem with that. Other than the Hand of Omega, I don't think he's got any necessarily super long-term canvas.
I don't think so. I don't think he's ever playing.
This one felt like.
I don't think he's ever playing the
long game. Well, in regards to this situation,
I think this is his attempt to play the long game, and as Keith points out, it falls apart, and then he becomes very. What's the word? He becomes very, maybe disjointed, because he has to suddenly, okay, I had this all thought out, and now it's all falling around me. So now I have to plan as we go. I have to figure this out as we go. That was another element that I liked, is that he set up the long game, and it failed. It's such a different aspect of the Doctor in general, with the exception of maybe the first Doctor was just bumbling through everything, but he didn't know anything.
Run away!
He was from a certain perspective, he was very young and naive. I mean, that's, if you really look at it, that can sum up the first Doctor's era in a nutshell. Is that while he was wise beyond his years because he had lived such a long life in that generation, he was still young and naive, and I really believe that that's why, and I think it justifies the reason why he was ready to toddle back to the TARDIS and take off. He wasn't aged and wise to the point.
He wasn't seasoned.
He wasn't seasoned to the point that he is by the time he's in his seventh incarnation. That's the word I was looking for. In his seventh incarnation, and he is ready to try to play the long game. And I think 4 was very steady in really seeing what was coming. He was playing the chess game, I think, for the most part. And even when surprises came up, he was already 5 moves ahead of the enemy. The Seventh Doctor, I love this idea of it's almost like his adversaries have gotten wiser. The challenges are much greater now. He's got people like the Scourge who really did almost be one step ahead of him the whole time until he managed to finally get a step ahead of them. Yeah. And he wouldn't have got to that point had it not been for the terrific team of Soldier Ace and Level-Headed Benny. I think that's what made this book so good. The other thing that I really enjoyed about this book is you were talking about how we had the 2 aspects, the planner and then the sudden, okay, I've got to make this up as I go along. This book had that same feel as well, in the sense that there was this nice balance, I thought, because it does get darker than a lot of the stories we have, but it also had a lot of fun and whimsy in it. There were moments where they did break the tension. Just made me chuckle because I thought that was the perfect moment for a tension breaker. That was the perfect moment for a what was your open?
A feeble witticism.
Feeble witticism. Yeah. This was a perfect example of a bullheaded ace moment. I mean, it was just, they were moments, and even the Doctor, when he's in skirmishes with the Scourge, he's still throwing out these little witticisms or these funny little things that I mean, it's almost goading sometimes when he does them. And I thought it was the perfect balance of that, and I think that's why I enjoyed it so much, because this story I should have came into this going, oh, this didn't feel like Doctor Who. That's something I say a lot. This is not my Doctor. This is very out of step with how classic Doctor Who should feel. I've said that many times. But that's often when they put us in a situation where I feel like they're trying to develop a classic story, and then they feel like they've gone off the rails because they've tried to do something different. And I'm not faulting them for that. This didn't feel
like my Doctor. I will be Glenn this podcast and say all of that, because it just, I liked the fun tension breaker moments. I thought they were good. I liked the idea of this cross stitch and the behind the scenes machinations that kind of drove all of these people together into this, into this thing. But it just, I don't know, for me it just didn't gel that we had the long game going on that failed miserably, and now I have to become...
Well, and it was a long game of him trying to fix a problem he created on accident, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. But then the very end, even with, okay, you and you are the ones that have hooked up and made the baby. Okay, great, fantastic, and we're going to give this happy ending. Yeah, I'm going to go home and tell my wife to start the divorce proceedings. I'm like, what? That's dark. You can't do that. I mean, it took that nice little bow that you normally get at the end of the thing and went, guess what? Real life. And it's like, but okay, to me, I get that. But
to me, that struck the perfect ending of this, because had it all wrapped up in a nice little bow and everybody rode off into the sunset, that would have been so contrasting to all of the elements, the dark and the light elements that we'd have had. But it was the reality of the situation.
For me, it made Brian an unlikable character. The husband. It made him an unlikable character all of a sudden, because it's like, okay, so now I don't, all of the nice heroic stuff that you kind of, it's cheapened by that to me. But I don't like that.
I didn't get out of it. He didn't do a lot of heroic things.
Well, no,
he really kind of just was there as the technical guy, and he was really bad at that. Yeah. The hero is the cross-stitch guy who does get the redemption at the end.
Yeah.
The cross-stitch guy is the one that he's all but given up. He's the reluctant hero because he's all but given up hope because of the idea, the fact that he feels like he really deserves this. I duped all of these people out of money. This guy stole 2,000 pounds. I mean, come on. But he feels so guilty about it. And he knows that's what the Scourge has zeroed in on, and that's the negative emotion that they're feeding from him. And so he's really the one he's the one that steps through and really is kind of that medium hero ground. And by the end, he is the one that is redeemed, because even they forgave me and they're going to keep me in the thing. I have to repay them and install. It was just a moment. Just another little fun little moment.
And I liked that. I like the fact that he had a wrap up of the consequences of his actions. Yeah. The other guy didn't. And maybe that's certainly true. That's certainly real life. That's certainly the way things work. But it just it clanged that hollow note at the end of a.
See, but if they all had gotten the redemption or gotten that nice little bow, I would have felt that it really went against everything. We just needed that little nugget. We needed the Doctor's faith in himself restored. We needed Benny to sum it up and really, be the hero, because she really is in this story. In my opinion, she's the hero.
No, I mean,
Ace was the muscle, but she was the hero. But we needed some of that. There's a baby. Oh, that's nice. And they've learned that there are two sides to the yin and the yang. Yeah, but this guy's still scum. I mean, that was fine to me.
Like I said, I don't know what it was specifically that it just tasted wrong. It was the wrong flavor. It was a broccoli sundae. It just didn't, it just didn't work for me.
It was hot fudge sundae for me.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I loved Bernice, and Bernice is very much the hero of this story, with Ace as her companion, and that all of that was great. All that was awesome. The Doctor realistically winds up being sidelined for the majority of it.
Oh yeah.
He's trapped in his own mind, and transformed, and
unconscious,
and unconscious. He's still waging battle, but it just happens to be,
The transformations were a thing that I thought was interesting and was okay with, but then the fact that they were easily turned back, it was kind of like, that's okay.
I think one of the other things, the two things that bother me.
Turning into insects, and it's, now they're...
Praying mantis, none the least.
Yeah, now they're not even half insect, they're back to normal. Okay.
All of that was so easily magic wanded away.
Well, it was almost very New Who-ish of...
And yet all these dead people.
No hard science doing any of it. It's goodwill and human nature that will fix this. Love will save the day. And it's one of those things where it almost didn't fit in the story either.
Yeah.
Some of the problems that I had was the Doctor's initial plan. He's got this paper. He's transferring Earth to the Scourge to set a plan in motion, but that's never really explained what that plan was. And so I had a problem with that because I never got the impression. I mean, clearly they're trying to convey the idea that if the invasion has failed, that Earth reverts back. And I thought, but this whole piece of paper thing against this darkness of evil, that's a terrible plan. I just there's nothing that says they're going to adhere to that contract.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I saw that kind of settled me on that was I think the discontinuity guide or something also pointed that out and said that they think that was merely the symbolism of the contracts between good and evil that you see in a lot of the literature and the what am I looking for?
The deal with the devil, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of that was just more of a allusion to that, and not necessarily too much to the plot.
If that's where they were going with it, I will say they failed.
It was his room number, that kind of stuff.
If that's where they were going with it, I think they failed with that particular literary allusion. And if anything, it was maddening because it felt like the Doctor's killing time. It felt like he's going through all these motions with the grand plan that he's got set up, and look, I've got a contract, and I'll pop over here and do this, and I'll bring him in. You've got to read this over, and there's a legal thing here, and blah 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 blah. It's like people are dying. Let's have a little more action and a little less posturing. That's the word, posturing. He postured through this whole thing. That's what I didn't like. I think the Seventh Doctor is great at posturing when it's needed.
Yeah.
When he has to drag something out because the time's not right for this to happen, and he's monologuing to the villain and unlimited rice pudding to Davros and all that kind of stuff. Fantastic. Let him go. Wind him up and turn him loose. None of that felt like it was really needed at this point.
You keep talking about people were dying. There was very few deaths in there. The guy that the aviation guy, his wife died.
There were people being taken over.
That was an unnecessary. People were, number one, being taken over, but for the most part, there were only 4 Scourge in this that had crossed over. The rest were being driven in fear. All the screaming and yelling that you heard was the Scourge inciting the chaos to feed on that so that they could basically power themselves in order to bring more across. So there was a lot less death than you think there was. Most of it, because they kept referencing the fact that a lot of people were cowering and hiding. And the Scourge at one point have that conversation about we must keep them fearful. Now there were some there was one guy, I think that one bit in order to, because they were starting to rise up.
Yeah.
And so he made an example of them. But the body count in this was very low. And I got the impression that when the wave starts coming and some people were transforming, I get the impression that the idea is by relating us to it that the Doctor reverted and Annie reverted back to normal form. Everybody did. So I think maybe you read more into the death count. There was a lot of fear going on there, but I don't think there was many people dying as you think there was. It certainly sounded like a lot of people.
Maybe, I don't know. The term feeding on them, I guess I took more literally.
Oh, see, now that's
and
the problem,
so
because
as...
there is a dialogue between the head Scourge, the Supreme Scourge, the Supreme Leader, I think is what he was called, and that other that there was a conversation that talked about we need to feed on their emotion. We need to feed on their fear.
Right.
And then there was one other
point. Which they were using the fear as what was going to allow them to transfer this over.
And at one point, he was encouraging them to step up that fear. And so they would go in there and they would brood over them and be that's scary and make them freak out again and not be confident and feed on that negativity, but they weren't actually physically feeding on anybody. I mean,
I got the impression they were in addition to the fear that there was both. But wasn't there one where the guy ripped a limb off and beat him to death with it? Didn't I hear that?
Like I said, there was some deaths, but the body count was maybe like 5 as opposed to
I don't know.
People are dying.
I didn't like it.
I thought that the unnecessary death, while it was necessary for the plot, the unnecessary death from the Doctor's perspective, I think was the aviator's wife. That was the casualty in my mind that I think the Doctor didn't expect. I think the Doctor, in his plan, maybe thought there were going to be some sacrifices, but that was almost the unneeded sacrifice because she was so close to the plot.
Who was the dead guy in the elevator?
He had died before.
Did they ever go back and wrap that story?
He's the one that the Scourge originally came through. He was that one they had killed. He was the first one that they killed. That was how the Supreme Leader came over.
Hobo.
Yeah,
okay.
He was what do they call him? They call Homeless Bill or something. Homeless Bob or something like that.
All right. I don't like it.
And the Doctor knew that death was going to happen because that was going to be the vehicle. That wasn't the Supreme Leader came over first. It was the other one that he did the negotiation with. Because then when the leader came over, that's when he said, the Doctor thinks he's got this worked out. The other aspect of it that I really liked was I always talk about how the demons and darkness, and they aren't physical things. They aren't. That's people's minds. That's mental instabilities. That's human nature. That I liked how they did equate the Scourge, even though they're in a separate universe, being the kind of fodder for the stories of hell and demons and depression, and that's why I liked that alliteration to literature and to religion as to this is what's there. It just happens to be another transdimensional or transuniversal being. I thought that was kind of cool. They were sort of the basis or the foundation of Satan in the Bible, or
and better handled than the angels in
Rapture. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, no, that was good.
But it also kind of better handled. It's almost like every time they do one of these, you think, well, everything can't be the source. But yeah, I think it can. I think everything that we encounter in Doctor Who, in its own way, is a melting pot of what everything has boiled down to in human society. I think I like that. I think it's clever. I wish you'd liked this more because it was. Again, I come from, and I set this up this way. I came from a completely different perspective because I got the benefit of walking in from the zero entry, shallow end into deeper waters by reading those 4 novels. And then
like I said, it may just be me because obviously Chrissy and Holly both liked it and both talked pretty favorably about it as well. I liked a lot of it. There was a lot of elements to it that I really, really, really liked. I just didn't like the story. I didn't like the framework that they gave me all these other elements in. It was kind of like, okay, it's another evil entity invading the universe kind of stuff. Okay, yeah, we've been there.
Well,
and I didn't like the way that was handled. Monster of the
Week, though, and you just kind of expect that.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a certain amount of that, but just the what's the monster this week? Evil. Okay,
just another element.
I like a little more meat to my monster, but
Well, do you feel like we got a little more meat in the next story?
No, I feel like it was an exact copy.
Well, keep reading that synopsis, and we'll talk about that one.
The Dark Flame. 1,000 years ago, the evil cult of the Dark Flame infiltrated every star system in the galaxy. In the history books, the cult is legendary. Its despotic leader is a terrible memory. But for some, the Dark flame still burns. For some, its horrifying power is the ultimate goal. All that is required for the right people to be in the wrong place and time. An archaeologist and his robot are prisoners or on the poisonous world of Marin Alpha, where they will uncover a hideous relic. The Doctor and Ace are on their way to the Deep Space Research Center Orbos, where Professor Bernie Summerfield is soon to start the countdown to Universal Armageddon. 4 acolytes of evil, 3 mad scientists, 2 companions, 1 doctor.
Dun, dun, dun! Now, I don't give this one as enthusiastic because I don't think it was near as good as Shadow of the Scourge.
It wasn't.
But again...
I think I actually enjoyed this one more. I don't think it was as good, but I enjoyed it more for some reason.
Is it because...
I don't know why.
Well, is it because, and I'll just say this and let you go on, is it because this one does feel a lot more like Doctor Who, quote unquote?
That could be. Although I didn't have as much of an issue as Sean did.
I felt this one felt less like Doctor Who.
Oh, see, I felt this one maybe because this one felt less New Adventure-ish. It still had all of the elements. It had still had a lot of the elements. It still had a lot of the darkness. It still had, fortunately, after having come through Shadow of the Scourge, I don't think the Doctor had to go to a level that he went in Shadow of the Scourge. So that was kind of refreshing. That the Doctor was almost. It's almost like the Doctor's been on a downswing from the time we're first introduced to him in Time of the Rani, and into this darkness, this kind of just really reckless. That's the word I want to use. No, it's not even reckless. It's
cavalier.
Cavalier is a word I would use. He's a gambler. He's a reckless gambler. He's very dark and he's very manipulative. I think that's the downswing. I think then by the time we get past Shadow of the Scourge and presumably some other stories within the New Adventures, he then is on the upswing. He starts to come back up, and I think that's why you can kind of justify the Doctor having tea in the TARDIS, reading H.G. Wells, taking the Master's remains back to Gallifrey. I think that this point he's on that upswing where we're going to get back to a lighter, less brooding, less manipulative Doctor, and I think that this is on that upswing. So it was actually a little refreshing to say, okay, the Doctor's been through his darkest hours, and now he's kind of on that upswing as well, and he's back. He almost back to his usual ways of being a little more forethought, a little less taking risks and gamble. He still takes risks and gambles, but he's no longer taking needless risks and gambles. It's more gambles in line with the plans A, B, and C that he does lay out in this one. And I kind of liked that, is that it's so different. I think the problem that I had with this story, and it's not even a serious problem, is we did these two next to each other so that we could do a Bernie thing, which is fine. We're not faulting that at all. But had these been separated enough, they wouldn't have felt the same. They kind of have a similar...
There's a similar tone. There's a similar flavor. There's similar plot elements to it.
That's what I'm hitting on, because I don't mind the tone and flavor being the same, because again, I think framed in the years
there's similar
the
ideas
aspect.
explored also.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's similar ideas and
plot
similar plot that I think is what is hindering this second story in all of our minds, because of the fact that we did them back to back. They're quite similar in that aspect.
Well, because you're still dealing with enemy of the week. What is it? Evil, coming through from another dimension, possessing a dead guy. We've been there. We just did this.
I think that just for me, I like the framework of this story. I like the skeleton of this story better than the first one. I don't know why. I can't pinpoint why I like this idea better, but I do.
Because there was a canine.
Okay. Maybe it's a C-3PO wannabe robot. I don't know. It started off, and I was really excited. It was like, this is going to be great. This is going to be awesome. And I liked all the stuff on the space station. I liked the motley crew of characters that we get introduced to. I like the robot. I like the other guy.
We're setting up a murder mystery.
I
love Benny.
It's not slow. This moves.
Mm-hmm. It moves.
It clips along. It sure does.
So I'm excited by all that. And then the Dark Flame cult. I was like, okay, what do we got here? And downhill from there. As soon as that was introduced as the element, that's where it went. And it just, okay, so the one scientist who very obviously is the bad guy. Okay, yeah, we need that. And then the female scientist who didn't fool me at all that she was in on it. Everybody on the station's in on this except for the robot. Come on, let's move along here, people. And they just kind of kept throwing it out like, oh, look what we're doing. It's like, no, you're not fooling me at all. I see through all this. And, Ace and Benny are great. Again, the Doctor's pretty cool. A, B, C, and D, which kind of flies in the face of the one we just went through. Maybe he learned from it, and that's why I
think we're on this upswing of where he's learned his lessons.
Still got these plans, but so much of it I felt like could have been avoided if he just simply said, "I think this is what the deal is." Let the companions in on it. Let the listener in on it.
But we've pointed out that he's very guilty.
He plays his cards very close to his vest, and they comment on it.
But many times before.
Benny really calls him out on it and says, "For God's sakes, will you just let me know what's going on?" And all he had to do at any point in time during this is say, "Well, I think this is it, but it could be wrong." Okay. See, and that would have freed Ace and Benny so much, but so much of what they wound up doing would have been freed up knowing that maybe this is what we're going up against.
That is no different than the Doctor playing his cards close to his chest in one of your most loved stories, Remembrance of the Daleks. It's no difference in that aspect of the Doctor, where he continues to keep Ace in the dark. He continues to keep quasi-unit in the dark. He continues to have this side, I don't want to say adventure, this side, what word am I looking for here? Help me out. Plan, this side plan with the Hand of Omega that he's keeping very close to his chest. It's very much the same. It's very much the same in Dragonfire. He knows what this thing is down in the belly of this planet long before he lets anybody know what it is, and Mel berates him at the end for withholding information. So it's everything that we've seen about the Doctor before.
I didn't like it in Dragonfire when he did it. And the difference with Remembrance, why on earth
do you like the Seventh Doctor then? Because that's a lot of his MO.
The difference in Remembrance is because it's the long game, because it's dealing with the Hand of Omega. He does not make any bones about it right off the bat. Once he realizes there's a Dalek in the junkyard, he warns everybody. Don't mess with it. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. Get a bazooka and shoot the face.
But he knows what he's got. He knows what he's got in that situation. He does not know what he has in this situation.
But that's the difference, is that he immediately warns people of the danger here because he knows what it is. And anything that he keeps them in the dark about is because he's got the long con going with the Hand of Omega. In this one, he doesn't know what he's dealing with, but he thinks he knows what he's dealing with, and he doesn't let him in on it. And it just seemed unnecessary. It seemed like somebody who...
I don't know. It seemed very Seventh Doctor.
Well, that's the thing. It felt like somebody who had never read or watched or listened to a Seventh Doctor story, but heard from other people, this is what the Seventh Doctor's like, went off and wrote a Seventh Doctor story with those attributes. it didn't ring true because there was so much unnecessary danger and peril that the companions were put into that they could have avoided.
I don't know. Ace
by
is
just a little bit.
Ace is putting a lot of danger. I can't talk about Curse. You guys haven't watched it yet. He's putting a lot of danger with the cheetah people in survival. Now again, I had talked about how the doctor was putting her in situations so she'd learn a lot about herself. So he had to essentially keep things very close to his chest because he was having to be manipulative. But he put her in the face of danger of the cheetah people when he knew very well who they were, and where they were from. For the longest time, we go through that story clueless, but the doctor has this gleam in his eye like he knows something or believes he knows something in this case. And then it comes to fruition. And the same thing happens here. This is no different than the Seventh Doctor we've seen before. These are the aspects that I'm growing to love about the Seventh Doctor as we revisit these stories. These stories, they are still poorly written, poorly produced stories. I will never step away from saying that's what I don't like about the Seventh Doctor's era. But I'm beginning to fall in love with the Seventh Doctor because of these very attributes that I'm seeing in these stories that I'm revisiting, and the same attributes that you're talking about that we get to see in The Dark Flame and in Shadow of the Scourge. Shadow of the Scourge took a different approach to it, and that's what I really liked about it. But it to me, it's no different. And maybe I'm just not seeing your perspective, but to me, it is no different than the.
Well, it's different from the matter of when he trusts Ace to be off on her own. And she's off on the thing. She's got the skull. She's run off. She's up in the space station hiding out. He's not concerned about her because he knows she can take care of herself. That's different.
Ace has seen a lot of growth. Yeah.
Ace has seen a lot of growth at this point and everything. And we presumably Benny has been around the block enough with the doctor.
This
to
is a
know.
woman who's an archaeologist.
Yeah, the
space archaeologist.
She's Indiana Jones of Doctor Who.
This is how this is going to work. So it's not even so much that. It's just that there's a difference to me for being coy for the plotting on words there. If he's being obtuse because he doesn't know, but he wants to appear to know, versus I've got a plan, but I'm not quite ready to fill you in on it. Because those are different aspects of the Doctor's character. Sometimes he doesn't know, and he's just not going to let on that he doesn't know.
Yes, agreed.
And sometimes he doesn't know or he doesn't let you know that he knows because, well, I'm still formulating this or working this out. And that's one of the things I love about the Eighth Doctor. Every time Paul McGann gets into a scrape, he'll flat out say, it could be this.
Yeah,
and then later it's
that's a great
stupid doctor. I didn't see what was
Absolutely.
going on. I like the open door policy there,
but you can't compare 7 and 8.
But you can't compare 7 and 8. But I don't mind that 7 always has his machinations and his stuff. But I don't know, with Shadow of the Scourge, it felt like they went too strong in that direction. That he had this master plan all mapped out.
Oh no, I agree.
And that seemed stupid.
No, I agree with you there. I just don't think you can apply that same logic to Dark Flame because I don't see the same Doctor we see in Shadow of the Scourge. And I've already said that if they had played this Doctor that we see in Shadow of the Scourge and continued to do that in the main range with the 7th Doctor, it wouldn't have worked anymore. I would have been, okay, well, this is a story, we did this in Shadow of the Scourge. I like that we stepped out of our comfort zone. We stepped out of the box. We did something a little different with the Doctor. We made the Doctor kind of learn his lessons here. And that's what I like about that story. I agree with everything you're saying when you apply it to Shadow of the Scourge. The problem is you're trying to apply those same fundamental things about the Doctor in the Dark Flame. And I don't see that because I see everything that he learned from Shadow of the Scourge, and he's playing it differently in the Dark Flame.
I agree. The Dark Flame Doctor feels more like...
I don't think you can compare the two.
Well,
or you should compare. You can, but you shouldn't.
I'm just using that as an example because the Dark Flame Doctor feels more like my Doctor than the Shadow of the Scourge Doctor. The Shadow of the Scourge Doctor did not feel like 7 at all to me. This one's closer. It's a lot closer. But it felt unnecessary for him to be secretive in certain elements. I don't mind him being secretive. I don't mind him holding his cards close to the vest. Those are one of those elements that I like about him. But there were times it was like, just tell him what's going on. You're being unnecessarily stubborn, which is another element of it. But
it just came off the heels of Scourge.
I don't think so. Because like I said, it opened so strong, and I was so excited about it. I was like, yeah, okay, cool, back to regular Doctor Who. And then it just kind of got mired down in the whole, like I said, this evil entity is going to come over and raise an army of dead skeletons to come.
You got to admit, you
Things
had to
that don't
love
feel like
when
Doctor Who.
When he's trying to figure out how to get the transmat working again, and he tells Ace, he's at the point in their relationship that he can send her into battle, and he knows he can.
Yeah.
And it's not that he has to even feel guilty about that, because he's at a point now, and I think he even had this inkling of her even when he was manipulating her and pushing her into battle. Now he doesn't even have to send her into battle. He can just give her a direction and she goes. You have to admit that when he says, take care of them while I work on this, just keep them off. And she's like, how do I keep them off? And he says, use this, and hands the umbrella. You had to love that. You had to have loved the fact that he handed his umbrella over to her.
I did love that.
And then said, try not to destroy it, or try not to, or don't you dare damage it, or something to that effect. I was like, that was so cool.
That was great. That was awesome. But an army of undead skeletons?
That's no different than a bunch of, I can't use that because you didn't like Scourge, but a bunch of praying mantis, Elseworld praying mantis.
Yeah. See,
I would have loved Scourge even more had I not seen the image of the praying mantis.
I hadn't seen the image of the praying mantis, and I, in my mind, they were just kind of these amorphous blobs with extra arms.
I love the cartoon, the little comic blurbs they do, and they did back in the day in Doctor Who.
The scene where Ace
this
gets
one ruined
stunned,
it for me.
and then he's screaming at her, wake up, and the other doctor's legitimately concerned. She's been knocked out. She's this. He's, she'll be all right. Ace, wake up. Ace, it's time for battle. Ace is, and it's kind of like, yeah. That's kind of how this should work.
And that's the relationship.
And are you up yet? Yes, and all this kind of stuff. And it's just not going anywhere for him.
But then finding the right words and approach that didn't make her was even better.
And so, I liked all of that. Even that was great. Where it's like, well, it could have come across as though he's being really harsh with Ace, and he's being very cavalier with Ace.
At this point, we understand their relationship.
That all
and
worked
how that
for
works.
me.
Yeah.
And, I loved Benny. Benny being in the cell. Benny being, by her own admission, I'm too old for this. Oh, thanks. The interplay. I love the interplay between her and Ace. It's kind of sisterly, kind of not, kind of, I don't know if you want to take it that way. It could have almost felt like maybe they were lovers at one point because some of the back and forth that they had going on. It's like, sure, okay, whatever. Great chemistry with these
married
two characters.
couple-ish.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah. Fantastic.
That's why I think
that
they're certainly on the same ground socially. I think that's
yeah. And I loved all of that. But it just got mired down in this plot. We've got an evil butler that lives in the center of a planetoid. We've got an army of dead skeletons. That there's no scientific rationale for how that's supposed to work. I'll write it off because it's an other universally influenced, and that maybe he's got. Okay, fine, whatever.
What's the dark light? It's the energy
dark
from
light.
The dark light. Yeah.
The dark flame.
Flame. Yeah. Well, they called it dark light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're running this dark light experiment, which is
what's funny because she's like black light, and he goes, or like what'd she say? Ultraviolet. He goes, no, actual dark light. No, this is actually dark light.
So,
black light.
I'll write that off because kind of sort of wishy-washy scientific explanation, fine, whatever. And then the bad guy, the ultimate bad, who runs around in a decomposing corpse body making Emperor Palpatine jokes. Didn't like that either.
See, I got a little squeamish about that, and I'll tell you what fixed it for me, is the fact that, honestly, is because as this character's playing out, and I really felt like baddie of the week, very tropey villain, very, villain-esque type things to say, and again, he was very Emperor Palpatine. It wasn't until the Doctor at the end has that impassioned diatribe with him, when he's talking about he's not even the evil or the villain or the henchman that he thinks or wants to be, and he goads him on in order to take him on mano a mano. No skeleton army, no the two drone people that I don't remember the other two who he had taken over their minds. It wasn't until the Doctor started pointing out that you can't even handle this Dark Flame. You can't even handle this. You know, I mean, just when he starts going, it was almost like he was pointing to the fact that you're just going through the motions, and that's what it really was. It was that revelation of you're not what you think you are. You're not this harbinger of doom, this all powerful being that's going to bring on the scourge of the universe. And starts pointing, what do you do after that? I mean, he started pointing those things out, and I realized at that point that was what the author was going for, was to make you feel like this was the ultimate villain, but it was only the ultimate villain in his own mind. He was just really more of a con man and was able to manipulate others. It wasn't that he was all powerful. He just was using this dark flame energy in order to influence people. And he did manage to begin to influence the Doctor even with that parlor trick, which is also what I like, the fact that he had set up this plan that if I get pulled into this parlor trick, and I'm using parlor trick, nobody said that, but I'm paraphrasing, if I get pulled into this parlor trick, you're to knock me out. I mean, it was just, once they got to the point where he was basically ripping back the curtain and saying, revealing that he is not who he is, who he thinks he is. He even thinks he's this. Once you rip that back, I realized that's what they were doing, is they were trying to create a character that you were supposed to believe, but they were pushing it so far that it was becoming, the mustache twirling villain, that suddenly it's all revealed that I'm the one in charge here. When the Doctor finally takes hold of it and sets up its own paradox, that blew me away.
See,
I went. That was the one thing that I was a little unsettled with, and I thought, you went there, and I'm just going to go with that. You did a little time reset. It felt like a Moffat or Russell T Davies cheat. Actually, it felt like a Moffat cheat. But I'm going to go with it because everything else up into that was pretty good.
The fact that they also addressed it in the story.
Yeah.
And it's just
even called it a paradox.
Yeah, and just try not to think about that.
The Doctor kept
just ignore that.
Brushing it off.
Not a problem. It's not a problem.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
that to me felt
made
a little...
the paradox okay for me.
Yeah, but that almost made it feel a little tied up in a little bow and say, okay, this is how we did a quick fix.
It was too neat.
Yeah. That was my only... If I had to come down on something, that was the one element of it.
See, that for me was the straw that broke the camel's back, because the villain...
I can see that, knowing how you've come through the story.
The villain, I felt like was very inconsistent through the whole thing, because there were times when he was very, almost debonair. And he was more than willing to have a genuine conversation with you about his plans for universal conquest. And I liked that element of it. And then there were other times where he was this bloodthirsty, go and make sure people are dying most horribly. I was like, okay, whatever. Which one are you? And then when he actually used the Star Wars line, I mean, come on, that didn't bother you a little bit? You didn't go, oh, come on.
No, I just
come join the dark side, we have cookies.
Yes,
really?
Yes, it did. But then what followed that justified to me what the author was trying to do. He was pulling every tropey villain thing in from. He was just throwing it all into the kitchen.
And like I said, if he had picked one,
and it was bothering me at that point.
If he'd picked one and stuck with it, I think that would have been fine for the Doctor to then launch into his diatribe. Because once the Doctor starts rolling, it's like, okay, here we go. This is the end game. This is where we've got him into this bit. You don't have the strength to take me on one-on-one. Okay, I've got him now. Everything else was set up to get to this moment. And if it had just been, if he had picked one of those elements of the villain, I think that would have been fine. But the fact that the villain in him of himself was just kind of like, they couldn't settle on what they wanted him to be.
I might have liked it a little better, but it was justified for me.
And then, like I said, the time travel bit at the end was like, oh, so now we get a happy ending? Because you're telling me that, I'm going to call him Lurch, the bad guy on the space station, who was obviously the bad guy. He's not actually a murderer now because we fixed it. Yeah. But your friend still died. Admittedly, you gave him a happier death, and now he didn't send that message back in.
I do appreciate a paradox,
but we're just not going to talk about it.
I do appreciate that Benny was uneasy about this situation that the Doctor had done. She was very uneasy with what the Doctor had done, and she says, "It's not better, but it's." Or what? How'd she say that about him? It doesn't
a more dignified death. It's better, but it's still.
She says it's better, but it's still not good or something. I don't remember how she said it, but I did like that Benny going back to Benny, she's a very consistent character. I think a lot of that goes down to the fact
she's the best part of these stories.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it boils down to the fact that when Virgin had lost the license to Doctor Who and realized that they needed something to push on and had the rights to Benny because she was created within their world, I think by them writing the character and then by Lisa Barrowman picking it up when Big Finish got the rights to do the Bernice Summerfield eventuals because they didn't yet have the license. I think Lisa was able to step in there, see what came before, and I think she made it her own. And I think that consistency in the character really worked. And I think Lisa Lisa Bowerman is the key element that keeps that character so consistent. I think she performs it admirably, and I think she really shined in these, and she really kept Benny the character that I think she carried over from her series, and continues to carry on because they're still making Benny Summerfield stories. So,
I think my biggest complaint with the story is the cult members. I was okay with the Dark Flame taking over Benny, and then her being able to go back and be reverted and not having any memory. I was okay with that because that's my companion. That's our companion, and it makes sense that since it has manifested in this corpse, it has these abilities. I didn't like the idea that the cult members were brainwashed too. I wish they had just actually been legitimate nut job cult members that wanted this big plan, and the fact that they undid that with what happened. They lost all this time. They didn't remember everything. That's the part that was sour for me.
See, but I think that went back to...
It tried to give it
too happy of an ending.
It did, and I can see where you're coming from.
Those were characters I didn't like anyways because they were supposed to be evil.
But it was
so I didn't need a happy ending for them.
But it was but the thing is, again, I probably would have a much sour taste in my mouth about it. But again, it goes back to the idea that it was a con man. It was a con job is what it was. He really was trying to pull forward this ultimate apocalypse, but he was doing it under the guise of the cult and the mysticism and all of this.
See, I think
it was the energy that he was using and funneling and controlling, and he was manipulating their minds in the same way that he did Benny. Now, fortunately, Benny woke up at the end, but I liked the idea that that's where we drew all this to a narrow. You're really not as powerful as you say or think you are.
I think he would have been more impactful and better villain had it not been mental powers on the cult guys.
Yeah.
If he had just literally been a con man and convinced them that this was this great, powerful thing that needs to come forward, it'd be one thing instead of just entirely taking over their mind.
And not done consistently, because when the female doctor reveals herself to be a member of this cult poorly, that
that was awful quick.
So what? Why are you helping him? Oh, because I'm a member of the cult too. She is totally 100% in this of her own free will. There is no power that you can tell me that this guy is influencing on this chick that has made her, And then we get all down to the planet, and what happens to all our I'm here of my own free will supporters? They're all zombified. Yes, master. Let's go over here, master.
Yeah. That's
poorly
again,
written.
I think that was right in line with the reveal that we got. I think the problem is that might have made subtly a better story. However, I think because of the time constraints that you have, I just think there would have had to been way too more backstory built into it as to how he got them to the point where they were so subservient that they were ready to die for him, as the butler did, or was
Well, and they could have even done it in a way where
that's the other thing.
They were loyal. They were loyal to him, and then once they got down to the planet and he was corporeal, changed the plan and had to use his mental powers to take them over. That what he was planning wasn't really what they were working towards, and then he needed to hijack them to execute his plan.
See, the butler,
that would have made a better story, but I still think it worked a little bit.
I did not buy for an instant that the butler was under any kind of mind control. The butler was totally there.
He was the
because
exception,
he believed.
But I don't think you
in what this stuff was going on.
supposed to until the rug's pulled out and you realize.
But they've always
been under their
problem with
influence.
it. If by giving it this happy ending and saying, "Oh, it was just all his mental influence that made them do this," like, no, I don't buy that, because that happy ending has basically undermined the entire framework of your story. Because within the confines of the story,
because the story
they're of their own free will.
The story's
they're just believing this.
No, the story has been a clever ruse and a con all along.
No,
I mean,
I
even and I agree that if he had been able to con them, but that's just it. He also did not come through until he was corporal. He was having to sort of do a lot of this astrally, I suspect, and a lot of that has to be mental projection. Now, granted, had we been able to had some time to develop a real cult, and I think that would have been a much better way to take this story. But I don't think it undersells anything. I do think that the only thing that I think wrapped up too nicely was the breaking them of the mind control. I didn't have a problem with. It was the resetting time element that I think was at fault here in this story, but.
I like it.
What do we got coming up on the schedule?
Hopefully better than this week. Why couldn't he take over the robot? He has this huge impassioned speech about, to be a living flesh and feel the blood pumping, blah, blah, blah. I'm cold, dead flesh. Take over the robot. At least that body's not going to decompose on you anymore. It's still cold and dead, but
maybe because it's mechanical. Maybe he has to be.
But he's got super mind powers. I don't know.
Yeah, but for organic beings, he didn't obviously mind control the robot. The one robot was still. He gave his life because he had. I mean, he was following orders because he was a robot, but that's because of the 3 laws of robotics. I mean, you could have you could apply that to everything. He actually got a little more self-aware when he sacrificed himself, but he was just following orders.
The robot was great. He was a great character. Bottom line,
C-3PO.
I can't wait to get to more Benny.
C-3PO would have been all bumbling and scared.
I can't wait to get more Benny. Is the bottom line from these stories. And everything else.
Unfortunately, has she returned in the main line? I think she's only
been in her other stuff.
So.
And I'm going to chalk that up to an underperformance of these 2 stories. Is why we haven't gotten more Benny. Oh, look, the numbers back me up. I think I'm being a sourpuss.
No.
I'm sorry. I did not like
you're Mr. Grumpy Bear this week, but I think that overall I admire the fact that Big Finish had made 2 attempts at stories that are commonly considered sidestep stories, and I think that that's the reason why they haven't come back. Is not because these did so dismally, because these actually, if you look. Across the board, get very good reviews from a bunch of fandom. Yeah. But I think a lot of that plays into the fact that a lot of fandom are familiar with the New Adventures. I think the reason why we haven't readdressed those is because Big Finish continues to make things their own. I think we did sidestep when we brought Frobisher on board for a while, and that was attempted for a while as well, and then we walked away from that. So I mean, it's there.
I would really like to see more. Like you commented, the dynamic between Ace and Benny was so good that I would like to see more of that kind of stuff.
Adventure on their own would be
or something along those lines. But I'd also like to see Benny with 8, since he's supposedly the one that she's enamored with. I would like to kind of let's get that story. I'd kind of like to get a
Rose in 10. We don't want that.
But we don't want that. We don't want that at all.
But we've had that.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That's why
with Charlie.
We don't need it.
But with Benny though, I think it's a different character. So it's not just it's not unrequited quite to the extent that
I don't know
Rose was. Anyway, so coming up next week on the schedule, our Friday Night Who for this week is the first 2 parts of the 2 Doctors. The 2 Doctors is one of those oddball ones that's a 3-part adventure, but it's basically double-length episodes, so it falls under the preview of a 6-parter, but there's not really a good point where we can call it halvesies. So we're going to do 2/3 of it this week. And that's, of course...
how many episodes is 3?
It's a total of 3 genuine episodes, but they're 45-minute ones. So we'll do 2.
An hour and a half one week and 4.
And then 45 minutes the next week. So... It'll be kind of an oddball one. We'll try it out and see how it works. Maybe once we get into it, we'll go, no, we should have totally broke here and figure it out for next time.
I don't think you could. You either have to do 1 and 2 or 2 and 1. I don't think you can stop in the middle of an episode.
No, absolutely not.
And then just decided, and this has been edited and posted on not only our feeds, and I've updated the schedule as well. Coming for we're doing the first half of that so that we can do our Beyond the Doctor for Colin Baker, since we're in June now. And we've decided Glenn's fantastic idea is to do The White Iris, which is an episode of Star Trek Continues. And this episode just posted this week?
Yesterday.
Well, relatively.
But Sunday they teased it, said it would be up soon, and then I think it dropped Monday, finally. Or maybe it dropped this morning.
I think it dropped Sunday. I think they teased it Saturday.
No, they teased it Sunday. Oh, well, you posted yesterday. Oh, Sunday was yesterday.
Yeah, Sunday was
yesterday.
I'm
sorry. I'm thinking it's Tuesday. Well, technically, it is. Yeah. You're right.
Relatively.
They teased it Saturday and posted it Sunday. I'm sorry.
So, for those that don't know, Star Trek Continues is a fan-based production where they're basically continuing the story of Star Trek set in the original series during the 5-year missions. And it's all fan-run and produced and everything. They've got, I think, 4 episodes up, and White Iris is the 4th of those. But Colin Baker's the guest star. So we've decided, what better way to, get some love of Star Trek in there than to do that. So that's what we're going to be doing.
And it's accessible to everybody.
And it's accessible to everybody. We've got the link on our website, and you can watch it
Chromecast,
on their website.
Cast it to your Chromecast.
Next week, on the 12th, we will finish off the 2 Doctors with part 3. And then there are a couple more big finish stories. Number 45, Project Lazarus, which is another 7th Doctor one. Kind of.
Sidestep.
And number 57, Arrangements.
Did you say 7th Doctor kind of?
Kind of.
Yeah.
And Arrangements for War, which is number 57.
Can I give a 2-word clue?
Sure.
Blue coat.
7th Doctor, kind of. And now, those of you that are longtime listeners might remember that we did review Project Twilight on the show quite a while back, which was a 7th Doctor story with vampirism and that kind of stuff. Yeah. This is a sequel.
6th Doctor story.
Or 6th Doctor story, pardon me. 6th Doctor story to that. What am I trying to say? It's a sequel to that one. So I don't know if you feel like you need to go back and brush up on it and re-listen to that one, or at the very least maybe go and read the synopses and kind of refresh your memory, because there are some elements and characters that do apparently transfer into this one. And that's
Nimrod specifically.
Well, but that's part of my failing.
What's her face?
Yeah, is she in it, or is it her son at this point?
It's her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, dealing with the Forge and all that. And that's part of my failing, is not putting...
no, it wasn't Angie. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have scheduled those together. I maybe should have, because I guess it's a trilogy, but some time passes in between the stories.
There's several years, yeah. I want to say like 40 years or 50 years or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how much, but
is it that long?
There's a span. So either way, so Project Lazarus and Arrangements for War.
Her kid's grown at that point, right?
They haven't.
Or is that the next one?
That must be the next one.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking ahead then. Okay.
The following week we'll be doing Father's Day for Friday Night Who with Christopher Eccleston, the weekend of Father's Day. And then a fun little topic, so you should all put your thinking caps on now. Great fathers in Doctor Who. So start thinking about who you would write in as the, who is a great father. Not necessarily the best father, but who's a great father in all of Doctor Who timeline. And we'll discuss that week.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. We're running along, so let's just wrap it up. If that's going to do it for this week, until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.